Good evening, everybody. Welcome to round number 3 of this year's ASR Supercars Championship. We are across the Tasman, across the ditch, as you would call it here in Australia, in New Zealand for round number 3 at Taupo International Motorsport Park. Importantly, this is the 25th of April. It is ANZAC Day, 110 years since the famous day back in 1915, and it's an unshakable bond between the Australians and the Kiwis that we share and continue to share and be there for each other over the years as they continue to tick by. And what a great occasion, but to take the Australian supercars across the ditch to New Zealand for a round on ANZAC Day. We've done it in Remembrance Day a number of years ago now, and we get the chance to have another race on ANZAC Day here in 2025. My name's Steve DeVries. Benjamin Roadie Rhodes is opposite me in the commentary box as always for this one. Roadie, let's not lose sight of the significance of the day. It is a solemn occasion here in Australia and in New Zealand, celebrated for its sacrifices that everybody had made, but there is always a silver lining in some things, and the silver lining is that we get to enjoy the ASR Supercars going around on track once all the ceremonies of the day are over.
Absolutely. Good evening to everyone watching along at home, or good morning, or good afternoon, or good middle of the night, depending on where you're watching from. And yeah, it's great that we get to do this. It's thanks to the sacrifice of those that is the reason of this day existing, and to be fair, of Remembrance Day existing as well, that we're able to do this, and we do appreciate what they did for us and what they laid down to allow us to have the life we've got now. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's some good opportunity for some good competition. It's very well worked out that we're going over to New Zealand for the ANZAC Day round. We have done ANZAC Day rounds at New Zealand in the past. Remembrance Day wasn't with Koei. Some very well planned out calendar work there. But look, really good chance to go to what is a really good little battle track, which sort of goes in well with what today is. But really great scraps here last year in Supercars, really great runs the last 6 months, the last 2 visits we've had here in Dev Series, and I don't expect anything to be too much different again tonight.
Yeah, I agree. The Development Series round a couple of weeks ago, good quality field of cars there as well, and plenty of action up and down the field, I guess, so to speak. Some surprise results in there as well along the way, which was nice to see, but that sets up the Dev Series Championship quite nicely, in the same way that tonight is a bit of an interesting take for the Main Series Championship, because the points leader is not here, and a couple of others as well with some absenteeism, but with the drop round obviously due to come into play at some point in the season, you miss a round, you obviously have a bit of work to do to make sure that you keep your advantage when that drop round gets factored in. I mean, at the moment, yes, you're dropping 0 points compared to somebody that will have scored potentially in all the rounds, but you just don't know until you get to the back end of the season how that's all going to play out, do you?
No, it's interesting the way things play out is that the driver who we think will be going for a championship tilt, given their pace of previous seasons, isn't here tonight. So drop round of 0, but he's very much in position where if he has a poor round the rest of the year, he's stuck with it. Whereas the man who's currently running for second, he's not here to win a championship. By all means, if it happens, if he runs enough rounds this year and he gets it, he'll take it. But he's still here to get that last win that he needs to get ahead of Luke Rosero in the standings. Championship would be nice, but he's not aiming for it. I think even then, we go down the list, and we'll go down the list later, but like third, not here tonight. Fifth, not through a lack of effort. He got a third and a fourth the first 2 rounds, but surfers weren't quite so strong, and off his pace so far in practice tonight, not looking so good either. Tied with another driver who's had a couple of podiums, had an iffy round at round 1 this time. He's been a bit more on the pace. And the driver who I would have thought to be having a go at the title didn't start at all at the Gold Coast, so he's already burnt his drop round as well. But we know what his pace is like, so it's very early, but we're going to see. I think we see a lot of movement tonight, both in drivers that are here, drivers that aren't here, and even then, I think we're already seeing some drivers already that, even with adequate practice, aren't adapting to this track the way that they would want to.
No, and this track has come around a lot quicker this year than it did last year as well, more importantly. Remember, it was toward the back end of the season last year, sort of October, November time-wise. Roughly, it was an 11-round season last year, and this round was the 10th round of the 11th round of the 11-round championship. It's the third round, so it's quite early in the season this time around, so it's come around pretty quickly. And a lot of people have sort of gone a bit scrambling, thinking that they had a little bit more time to get their act together and get themselves ready to go for this round, but it's snuck up on them quite quickly. So that's something to be mindful of too, as you're saying just there. A few drivers down the rankings where they, the time-wise where they thought they might be a bit further up, just taking a bit longer to adjust to this track. It hasn't changed since last year, but it's just come around a lot quicker. A lot of people not probably reading the calendars as they should. We will have a look at this track because it retains the same format as last season, being a triple sprint round, although the distances this year have increased by 10 kilometres for each race. So onto the North Island of New Zealand, just outside the town of Taupo. You can see we have the Taupo International Motorsport Park. Using the Supercars layout that we do use, it is the older pit lane, not the current pit lane that we have. It is quite a bull ring, isn't it, Rhodey? It's one of those places where you've got to be very, very patient. You've got to sort of line up your passes and really commit to them at those times, because passing can be quite tricky around this circuit.
It can be, yeah. Essentially the first, it's not quite the first two sectors, but everything up until 9 isn't really a one-line run, but it's probably not too different to something like, say, a Barbagallo, where if you're going to run too wide, it has to be like you almost have to like prearrange it. You have to be willing participants in going too wide through these sectors. Some of which, like 2, 3, that's really one line. The flick through 6, 6 you can get away with. 7 is a bit tricky; it's a bit tight there. And 8 is really one line corner. 8 and 9 because of the speed you want to carry through there. But you can get too wide in a lot of other spots. But you really have to be a willing participant in being too wide. But it's very much the thing is you sit there and you just hound someone, and I think you and I were both doing a bit of it the last time our Dev Series was here. A lot of it was just hounding people through that first sector, just trying to encourage them to make a mistake, and maybe that was where you'd open up the door. Otherwise, just trying to pick a spot and make a move. It's Barbagallo, I mentioned earlier, I bring it up again, it's another track like Barbagallo where you have to plan ahead to a degree. You have to go, right, I'm going to make a move at this corner, so I have to position myself here 3 corners before, here 2 corners before, here the corner before, so that I'll be in the spot where I need to be for that corner. Usually that corner for a pass, the easy ones are 10 into 11. I know plenty of guys like to do a bit of a cheeky dive bomb through 12. I was a victim of a couple of cheeky dive bombs through turn 12. And into 1 is a good spot as well, but you can get past really anywhere on the track. You just have to have a willing participant in being passed.
Yeah, that's right. You talk about something that you're mentioning there about, just keep, hounding people throughout the whole entire lap. Keep the pressure up. That's the biggest thing I think that came out of the development series as we get ready to go into qualifying. The pressures of a different kind here in qualifying. It's all about you and the clock and timing your run. But in the race trim, it'll be all about keeping the pressure up on your opponent in front, trying to get them thinking, get them to make a mistake, get them to open up the door at an inconvenient time for them, but a convenient time for you. So that's probably the one thing about this circuit that you can do is it is quite a narrow spot in some parts to pass. This is probably one of the prime passing opportunities along with turn 1 here is down the hill into turn number 5 and then coming down the run to the hairpin and then down to the back straight, so into the last sequence of corners. They're sort of the 4 passing zones to look out for in the race, but got to continually keep the pressure up through some of these very, very difficult corners to negotiate throughout the lap. So you can see here we've actually got a couple of substitutes that are running tonight as well. Lockie Burke, who's in for Cam Rutledge, late minute change there. It was originally meant to be Ben Hall, but unfortunately out through injury, so a change here. There will be a few others that we will allude to throughout the night. I think we've got at least 3, maybe 4, I think, Rhodey?
I think there are 5 subs total, of which most of those turned up in the last 24 hours. I know Palfrey was originally meant to be driving for the not present Will Devonish, but he's been moved to SES because CRE found himself an internal driver to substitute instead. But yeah, we've got 5 or 6 total subs for tonight, which is a lot, but it'll be good because we get to see some names we haven't seen for, I think some of them are going back 6 months.
Yeah, going quite some time actually, which is really good to see. So clock has started, 8.5 minutes remaining, and the first lap's underway. Minute 30, give or take for your lap here. A little bit less than a minute 30 actually, but getting around and getting through your program and getting at least 1 or 2 runs in for your first run, and then maybe into the lane, get a couple more tyres on, and then go again is the order of business. And let's start to see what sort of sector times drivers put out. First sector marker comes up on the exit of turn 5, so 28.5 there for Brandon Dostal, which we're looking at now. Noah Turra about 2/10 quicker already with purple sector in against his name. That's immediately bettered by Kurt Stenberg. So already times very, very quickly changing at the top of the, not so much the top of the order, but for those drivers that have already started their laps. 18 runners here tonight in the server, 19 actually. We have lost one driver in the change to qualifying, so there'll be one driver off the back of the field. I believe it'll be Daryl Callaghan, sorry, who will be off the back of the field for the opening race of the night. Just to refresh everybody's memory, because it's a sprint format, there is a top half inversion that takes place for race number 2 as well, and then progressive from race 2 to race 3. So that's the way the sprint format tends to work as we start to get our first times on the board. So Noah Turra 25.5 straight to the top. Kurt Stenberg less than a tenth of a second behind, so very tight between those two at the top. Now they were the only 2 drivers, I think, that were in the 1 minute 25s when we went from the practice session into qualifying. So expecting those 2 to be towards the pointy end of the field in qualifying for race number 1 tonight.
Yeah, they were the only 2. And it's very much the argument, I suppose, of who's pulled out qualifying times during practice. Generally, they try to avoid doing it to the very end, especially on a shootout, which obviously we don't have tonight, but on a shootout, you really hold on to your reserve and reserve some pace until the end. But yeah, some good runs already from the 2 of them. Mitchell Steele-Allison up to 3rd, which is a good surprise. We will acknowledge the gap is a second and a half between Stenberg and the rest of the field, which is then made up of Mitchell Steele-Allison, Dane Liccardo and Luke Speck. Hans Brunswick up in 6th and Brendan Ross up in 7th, which leads me to suggest not that they're feeling terribly slow, but Ross is pretty confident he'd be aiming for second last tonight. So I'm inclined to believe, based off of that and the fact that they're as high as they are, that a few drivers they still yet to set times. I see there's no Newing up there, and he's generally pretty quick, and there are a few other drivers missing from that list as well.
Yep.
And also Brendan and Ross right at the bottom, 11 seconds off. That won't be representative either.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a few, or Brent Foley, you mean, being off the bottom?
Oh, sorry, no, Brendan Dostal even. Sorry, I was looking at Foley.
Got
Dostal right at the bottom.
Yep, got a couple there to make some difference. Yeah, so Hans Brunswick and Brendan Ross in the substitutes for tonight, so good to see them back out there. Brendan Ross actually just goes 3rd with that last run as well, so very tight as they move up the order, so good result from him. As Liccardo goes through, was 4th. As Foley jumps to 3rd, that pushes Liccardo down to 5th and Ross down to 4th. And now he gets actually dumped down to 6th again. Yes, Newing goes up to 3rd. So you were just calling Newing's number, and he's immediately jumped into P3. The margin, though, between the top 2 and 3rd place is quite a lot at this rate. So it'd be interesting to see whether that comes down over the course of the next handful of minutes or not, as some cars have already gone back to the lane, got another set of tyres on and going again. I think Brunswick was one of those who was in 6th, has now been shuffled down the order to 11th. So going for maybe a 2-lap run at the back end and a first lap run just to put something on the board in the first section of qualifying, as we're now into the second section, which is after the halfway mark. And just keeping an eye on Steve Warwick here, he's got Luke Newing behind him as they come down to the second sector marker here, just on the approach to the hairpin, and he's got 3/10 in his hand at the moment, but a bit of a lock-up going wide there, but that's actually not too bad because it's a cambered corner. You can actually carry a little bit of speed through there, and there'll be some different lines we'll see through the corner. Some drivers will keep the tight line, some drivers like to run the high line, cut it down late. You'll get some drivers that will V that corner off, and just all about different approaches and your driving style. It's sort of not quite settled, I think, as to what is the fastest way around that corner, because it's all dependent on the kind of driver you are and your driving style.
Yeah, it's similar, and it's on the Monaco Gravel drivers. They call it the bowl, similar to turn 6, 1, 2, 3.
Correct.
6 at Barbagallo. Yeah, okay.
Cold corner is turn 6, yes.
Cold corner, yeah. Yeah, so similar but different. But yeah, like I've seen runs through there where you've pinched the rears and you're almost back into the corner. Not quite, but for a supercar, you pinch back into the corner and you're still quick. There seems to be no real bad lines through that corner outside of just running in way too hard, understeering wide end up in the gravel, which I think you've done, I've done. I think half the Dev Series Red did. But it's a really good flexible corner. The one thing that helps Steve there as well is there's the curb on the inside, which I've seen people hit. You don't want to hit the curb on the inside exiting that corner because you'll just pick up wheel spin. Next to that curb is a pretty healthy little bump in the road. You also don't want to hit that when you're trying to accelerate because that kicks you into wheel spin. I know in the Dev Series cars that was a good defensive tactic actually to hold people to the inside or give people the inside, but force them right to the inside so that they'd kick into a wheel spin so that you can pull away from them down the straight. So being pushed wide like he was, and I think generally a lot of drivers were seeing are running a little wider. The exit curb is the safest place to try and push your car towards through that corner, and it will help you then set you up with a good run. And really, it's almost the most important, at least in a race, it's probably one of the more important corners on the track because it's such a long run down that straight. And if you have a really poor run, you have a chance to be passed by maybe 2 or 3 guys if you're in a train.
Yeah, that's right. Burke up to 6th. Noatara behind him. Goes up to, or still stays first, but he actually increases the margin by, an extra 1/10 and a half. So good result for him. And there's his nearest rival just coming out of the lane to get his next lap on the board. But Tara, I'm not sure if he's going for another fast one here or not. Looks like he is fairly committed to another fast lap attempt here, going up and over the rise at turn 4. That's a really tricky lap or tricky part of the course because it's effectively a blind crest. You're going into that corner, you're coming out of the chicane, you're going up and over this little rise, and it's very difficult to pick the not only the tip-in point, but you just need a little bit of a dab of brake just to get the nose of the car with the weight transferred to the front, so the front end bites and you can sort of launch over that inside curb. But it's very difficult to pick that apex point because if you're even an inch or two off the ideal line, you just get carried quite wide through that corner and end up going into the AstroTurf and sometimes out as far as the grass. So it's a very, very tricky corner. We'll take some onboards during the night and just show you how that approach is. Sitting on the passenger side doesn't really do it justice from sitting in the cockpit and seeing where that the line for that actually is. Noatara all crossed up at the final sequence of corners, somehow managed to keep it together, but was a little bit down his time. He'll put the cue in the rack and he'll see if Stenberg can chase his time.
Yeah, it was an interesting one to pull in after that. I think maybe he was just down and didn't feel like it was worth sending another lap, but what he's almost done in a way is given Stenberg a bit of slipstream there, which might come into play. Granted, the gap is 4/10. And actually, in all that time, we have seen that the gaps have been closed up. So Foley's only 2/10 behind Stenberg at the moment. Newing's just gone quicker than Dostal.
Yep, just sets a very nice time there. Only fractionally slower than Brent Foley too. Noatara did give a bit of slipstream to Stenberg, but he was on an outlap. So for Stenberg, there's no advantage gained with any of that. The last runner that we're waiting for is to actually set a competitive time is Jacob Palfrey. He finally does, but last of all the runners at the moment, so he's got a little bit of work to do there. What of Kurt Stenberg? It's currently P2, provisional front row for him. Get a read on the second sector split here. Up on his PB, but still a little bit behind Noatara, and that's a personal best in Sector 2. He was a bit slower than his best in Sector 1 by, actually compared to Noah's best lap, behind by about a 1/10. So there's not a lot in it here. Stenberg maybe can find a little bit in the last few corners. Fully committed here, and a little bit, sort of took a bit of speed through the second last corner. Gets to the line, found some more time. Whoa. Just unfortunately didn't find enough, close to half the deficit, and that sees him starting P2. What about Brenton Foley? What was he up to? Personal best in the first 2 sectors for him. So on the in line for an improvement, much quicker than Stenberg in Sector 2 by 0.3 of a second. 2/10 slower in Sector 1, so this will be fairly close if Foley can keep this together. Can he launch the PBF Camaro to the front row? He can't. Oh. He comes up short by a 1/10. So I told you that one was going to be fairly close. So he ends up 10th after all of that. Newings put the Cunerac, so too Dostal, Ligmanis. Everyone in the top 7's now done. Steve Warwick, that's a big surprise for me, moved up to position 8. That's a great job for Steve Warwick.
That is a very good run for Steve, yeah.
Excellent run. And then Steele Allison in 9th and Burke in 10th. So that is all the cars in the field that have set the laps for qualifying. There's Steele Allison, so good result for him in the PBF by SES entry. And Lockie Burke on his return, another one of the substitutes tonight, up to P10. So he's showing no signs of any loss of pace, especially considering he did not drive this circuit last year.
No, he's done. Oh, he hasn't touched this track at all. Ross has done a few laps, and I think the gist of it was last year was he was that far off the pace. He didn't stick around for the race. I have convinced him to maybe stick around a little longer tonight. But generally, yeah, the subs, I think the subs, I think, especially for some of them, I mean, Palfrey and Murrell, we've got an idea of where their pace is going to be. Palfrey has already driven this year. Murrell haven't driven this year yet. This is actually, I think, his first race this year because he spent the first couple of months effectively without a computer. So he's only just gotten that back, I think, within the last week. But we've got an idea what his pace is going to be like, or should be like, because he did do a couple of sub drives last year. It's not like the others didn't drive. I mean, Rossi was in the championship full time. Technically, Hans and Berkey were in there full time, but in terms of their appearances, I think they were probably closer to a part time. But I think those three really, as opposed to Palfrey and Murrell, who have sort of kept in the fold, for the large part, they've kind of just gone cold turkey on. I wouldn't say they've gone cold turkey against sim racing. I know they've been doing a bit of iRacing in the meantime, but I think Hans especially hasn't touched his sim for much, if anything. I think might be for Hans. I think definitely for Rossi, it just so worked out that he had a public holiday was today, so he was actually able to race. But yeah, it's interesting to see how some of these guys go. To be more for the race, I suppose. This being a track where it's hard to pass, if they get themselves to a good spot and sort of bring their racecraft out to play, and we know they've got racecraft. They've been racing in ASR, I think, go back to sort of 2018, 2019 for the earliest of them. They know their way around a car, and they know their way around each other.
Yeah, that's right. Let's have a look at how the standings are sitting coming into tonight. Now, as we said, there's a few drivers that are missing for this one, so let's see how it stands after the opening 2 rounds. As you said, your championship leader, Will Devenish, has clocked up a fair old amount of points. There were 600 on offer across the opening 2 rounds, and he's got 588 of them. Such has been how things have played out. He's not here tonight, though, so that allows a few drivers behind to play a little bit of catch-up tonight and at least make the championship a little bit interesting before drop rounds start to get factored into play. So the nearest ones of those will be Kurt Stenberg, so keeps on the track. We're sort of expecting him to be up the pointy end and be probably the new championship leader by the time the night's out, if he keeps his nose clean, chasing that win record in ASR, as you mentioned earlier, Rhodey. Dave McDonald, 3rd place driver, he's not here tonight either. So the likes of Luke Speck and Curtis Sigmanis looking to jump over the top of him. Lockie Locks had a decent start to the year, and he kept his nose clean throughout some of those opening 2 rounds. Likewise, Daniel Cox, they've sort of just kept going and plugging away at things, and by virtue of everyone else falling off the cliffs around them, they've managed to move themselves up into the top 10, which is good to see. Rutledge is not here tonight. Smith, who's not here tonight, and then Brenton Foley, who had a bit of a couple of issues over the opening 2 rounds. He's managed to sneak himself inside the top 10 there. We then go over the page and have a look at 11 through to 20, and a number of these drivers also missing tonight. But the big one there, and this is because he skipped the round at Surfers Paradise a couple of weeks ago, not wanting to risk some hardware issues that he was having and have it cause further issues for other people. Noah Turra down there in 12th place, so he needs a big night. So he's kick-started that in the most appropriate fashion with pole position. Can he go on and win the opening race? And then he's got to look at trying to move through the field from the mid-pack in the top half inversion grid for race number 2. So, Rhodey, that's, I guess, is with the rest of the people on the screen there, 11 through 20, the one that we're staring at the most here is probably Noah Turra. to see him try and advance up the order a bit. And probably Luke Newing needs to probably get a couple of points on the board here as well for SES Shogun. So he's had a bit of a lackluster start to the year as well. Things not going his way, but this is his chance to launch his campaign with a couple of the big names absent.
Absolutely, yeah. Newing a pretty open floor for him to try and move up, but generally just going to finish. He has some good runs, and it wasn't for a lack of effort. He just wasn't able to finish either of the races at Sydney, but he had at Gold Coast. But he had good pace. Top 5 at Sydney as well. He generally had a pretty good year for pace, but it was just unlucky at Gold Coast. Tara, it's one of those things that it doesn't look right at this end of the season. The math isn't mathing in your head or in anyone's head, but I still think Tara, granted, he's an uphill fight. I still think Tara is in our championship fight. It's going to take something. Given that I think Kurt has identified probably 1 or 2 rounds he won't make it due to some clashes, then possibly won't see him for all rounds. Devonish, he's missed tonight, which is only the 2nd round I think he's missed of ASR Supercars in the history of the series. But look, it's entirely possible that Will has a bad night somewhere. We've made little mentions of it here and there. Have been working on it, but sort of the whatever he starts been creeping back in at points as well. That's not necessarily going to be enough to ruin the night. But even for the likes of like Foley had a couple of issues last round out, and Foley's been racing in the series as long as Will. Everyone can have a bad night, so he's going to need some things to play his way, Tara. But look, all he can do is run his best pace and keep himself ahead of the likes of a Stenberg and a Will when he's back. And at least based off of qualifying so far tonight, still races to go, and I haven't seen race pace from either of them in the last 6 months around this track. Realistically, the way things are looking, it might be a 2-horse fight for the win. So pretty good odds for Noah there. But if he can keep himself up front of Kurt, that's the first thing out the way. He's just going to then worry about Will when Will comes back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Over to the team standings. So CRE Engineering clearly out in front at the moment. That's something that has been pretty evident since the opening round, is that they have definitely been the team to beat. Not just that team, but also the sister sort of satellite teams as well. They've all been performing at a very, very high level over the course of the opening 2 rounds, and have walked away with some good points. There's probably been a few times where they wish they had a couple more, but they've done very, very well so far. So 2 CRE teams toward the top of the standings, and pretty close there. Luke McHugh Racing and SES Shogun have definitely got their an own internal sort of a fight there, given the teams are sort of interrelated. And CRE Amped Up Racing is in there too. So a very good fight for 3rd, 4th and 5th right now in amongst all of the standings there too in the early going here. So lots still more to play out in the team's situation for this year. So that's not something we focus a lot on until we sort of get to the back end of the year. It's the Drivers' Championship that is the one that sort of garners the most attention these days when it comes to everything in ASR Supercars. Just getting the last couple of drivers that are doing a couple of practice starts and all other things at the moment, just to conclude the qualifying session and conclude the warm-up session and move into the race session for the first time tonight. 3 races. As we said, they're the sprint races, so the new change for this year was the shorter race formats end up with a slightly different tyre wear, which means no more tyre conserving. It's all about sprinting. You can actually afford to push the tyre, but the caveat is you've got an increase in the distance. So there's an extra 10 kilometres tacked onto each of the races. It's gone up from 50 to 60 Ks, and from the Dev Series it went up from 40 to 50. So a little bit of a trade-off, but gives everybody an extra couple of laps to really figure out how to pass your opponent around this tricky track. So it's the first time this year that we've gone sprint racing. We are going to do it on a couple more occasions this year, at least one more occasion at the Bend, and possibly one more, just depending on how the rest of the calendar pans out with international round. But at this stage, scheduled for one more a bit later on this year. Let's get the grid rolling around here, and let's run through them. Here's Rody.
So, starting from pole is Noah Tara. Good run for Noah. Lead of the 2 Series amped up racing cars here tonight. Second is Kurt Stenberg for Antico Autosports. He's running that winner chicken dinner car. Still aiming to beat Luke Rosello overall. He's currently tied. He was aiming to do that at Gold Coast, but wins evaded him in both races. So he's had a bit of a challenge on tonight, but it'll be a bit easier without Will in the field. Third is Brenton Foley. Good run for him in the lead of the 2 PBF Race Engineering cars on the grid tonight, with Luke Newing in fourth, the first of the 2 SES Shogun cars here. Fifth is Brandon Dostal. Good run for him actually to sneak up there for Luke Racing by SES. Believe he might be the only car for his team here tonight. With Curtis Igmanis in sixth. He's in a good spot actually to not that he's really in a fight so much with Will Devonish, but one of those guys that will be able to move up the points in order as things play out tonight. Seventh is Luke Speck, the second SES Shogun car, so that's both of their cars in the top 7. With Steve Warwick in 8th, that's a really good run for Steve in the Renstall PBF Blackshaws number 63. 9th is Mitchell Steele Allison for PBF by SES number 24, just one of those cars here tonight. Rory Collins unable to make it. With Lockie Burke filling in for Cam Rutledge tonight for Sierra Anson Motorsport, the lead of those 2 cars in 10th. With Daniel Cox, his teammate for tonight, in 11th. 12th is Lockie Lock, the second of the series amped up racing Mustangs, with Darren Loughnane in 13th. He's the only one of the Vortex Racing Team Mustangs here tonight. 14th is Brendan Ross filling in for Phil Vogt. It's the first time since 2021 that he's been teammates with Brendan Ross in PBF. Oh, sorry, Brendan Foley in PBF. With Dan Liccardo in 15th place. Good to see Dan on the grid. 16th is Hans Brunswick. He's filling in for Leonard Grossel tonight in the Renstall PBF Blackshaws 666. Good to see Hans back in the team as well. With Scott Murrell filling in for Will Devonish in 17th, the first time someone other than Will has been in the number 15 in the entire history of the championship. Jacob Palfrey filling in for Dan McDonald in 18th, and his teammate Darryl Callahan starting off the back in 19th.
Thank you, Roddy. There's a couple of drivers. I think Callaghan's just trying to get himself repositioned on the grid. There we go. That's what we were after. We're waiting for him to get into position. It's race number 5 of the championship for 2025. The first race of the Taupo triple header. Let's get going. Fantastic launch for Kurt Stenberg. Left Noah Tara for dead there and moves into the lead pretty quickly. So great start for Stenberg. Always been a strong suit of his, has been his starts. Newing's looking pretty racy on the outside of Brenton Foley too. In fact, he might actually just get this job done going through the chicane. Very, very tight as they head up there. Already a few mirrors going flying. Foley was sideways coming up the hill. Dostal's going to buy into this as well. 3 wide at turn 4. He might get the both of them. No, he gets Foley, and Foley has to let Newing concede, who himself has gone for a wild ride. Cross the nose of the Pepsi Max machine. That's a big one for Luke Newing. He's well down the order, and he just got a little bit sideways coming off of turn 5 there and spins to the inside the circuit. Well, what were we saying at the beginning of the night, Rody? We were saying this is the opportunity for him to move himself up the order. Now he's got a mountain to climb.
Yeah, look, he's aimed probably to get back to what will be 10th. Will be the grid inversion for tonight.
Yep.
But
here it is.
But yeah, I think it was as much as he might feel agree about that. I think very much Dostal was a passenger in that. I think he was basically more or less going to half spin or spin by himself. It's just that Dostal was there to finish him off. But I don't think there was much that could have been done there. I think I will say they were very racy from the 3 of them to be going 3 wide. Lap 1, you got 19 laps around this track, guys. You don't need to go that hard that early.
No, I agree with you there. Dostal was the innocent party in that one. They were fighting and squabbling hard over 3rd, 4th and 5th. Foley was the smart one there. He sort of backed out of it and realised, no, I don't want any part in this. I'm on the outside. I'm going to get hung out to dry here. Newing got a little bit too excited and lit the rear up, and then just wasn't expecting there to be another car right there when he sort of lit it up and went sideways. Just that little bit of contact is all it took, and he's down the back of the field. But you are right, 10th is the cutoff. Is the position that will be determining the top half inversion. The way that inversion works is it's basically the top half of the field, and if it's an odd number of cars on the night, it's rounded up to the nearest number. So as it stands right now, it's 19 cars, so half of that is 9.5, which means we round up to 10. and we end up with that's our number to who we're starting on pole position for the second race of the night. So at the moment, that's Dane Liccardo in 10th. So for Newing, got a fair old mountain to climb. He's slowly starting to catch up to some of the back markers at the moment. So he's lost a fair bit of ground, but it's not insurmountable for him as he works through the field. So Foley has managed to actually managed to hold off Brandon Dostal after that little bit of contact, managed to get back into the position he started in third after what was a pretty wild skirmish going through the opening couple of corners on lap 1.
He has, yeah, he's just setting at a good pace now. He has got 3 seconds and slightly increasing to that lead battle. That is becoming a bit of a battle back again. Obviously, Taro with the much worse start compared to Stenberg was he had the inside line and just couldn't do anything with it on the run to turn 1. But he's back onto the back of that number 1 Camaro, and I don't think he's looking to make a move just yet. He's probably just sizing up, where's a good spot to go. But also, we saw this last year. The real opportune spot to make a move around here is wait for the very last lap.
Yeah, that's right. Just looking at the battle for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. Now, of course, everybody's moved up a spot because of Luke Newing's departure off to the infield on the right-hand side here. So that means Steve Warwick up 1 spot. So too Burke, who's gained, I think, 2 spots since the start. He's managed to move himself up to 8th. Steele Allison and Liccardo's had actually a really good start. Liccardo he started like 15th, I think, wasn't it? So he's actually had quite a decent opening lap, which is excellent for him. And as I said, he's in the catbird seat at the moment, and with a reasonable advantage over the next car behind, which is Brendan Ross. So for him, it's all about just follow the leader at the moment. Don't need to do anything too silly. And a couple of drivers there taking that inside curb at turn 10, the hairpin there. That's something you were mentioning in the qualifying session, Rody. You typically don't want to do, because you saw there those cars got a little bit tail happy as they exited, taking that little bit of the curve.
Yeah, I guess you can get away with it if you're going to train in so much as you're already checked up a little bit by virtue of following the car in front and whatnot. Yeah, that and probably heavier cars that get away with it and fresher tyres get away with it. I wouldn't be doing it at the end of the race with a lack of weight over the rear axle. The tyres aren't going to burst, but the tyres are going to wear in this one, and the tyres do feel a bit second-hand at the back end. I wouldn't be touching the curb or going anywhere near the apex of that corner at that point of the race.
No, I wouldn't be. A couple of drivers a bit further down the field. So Scott Murrell here on board with the CRE, number 15, right up the back of Lockie Lock. That's that blind turn that we talked about during qualifying as well. And that line was pretty perfect there for Scott Murrell. It's a bit hard to see because the camera is slightly elevated in the back of the Mustangs and the Camaros, so it's a bit difficult to really gauge the true picture. But imagine pitching it being a little bit lower and in the driver's seat, not being able to really see the full bonnet, and you come up on that part of the course, and it's basically, like I said, like a blind crest. You just don't know where the other side of it is until you get up and over, and then you pick where it's got to go. And if you're a little bit out of the tram track, you end up running off the end of the AstroTurf on the exit of that turn and through the grass, and it really ruins you. So Murrell is getting rather interested in the back end of the 237 Mustang from Lockie Lock here, heading down the back chute. It was actually pretty close coming out of the hairpin, but has just backed away a little bit, lost a little bit of ground in the traction zone, heading down the back straight. So that sort of took him out of the slipstream edge. He's got quite a good turn of pace going through the corners at the moment. So Murrell, he's trying to keep the pressure up, as we said in qualifying. Keep the pressure up. Make your opponent make a mistake. That's one of the ways to get past here.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at. I think generally speaking, he's got a slightly better run off of the corners than Lock. The problem is he's just so close to Lock at most of these points that he can't really do anything with it. He had a better run off the start of the hairpin. The problem was he was so close he had to get out of the throttle to avoid running into Lock. And this is one of those things where I'm not saying that Scott's necessarily playing, not playing at full strength, and I'm not saying things, he'd be out there turning like he was a teammate, but at the end of the day, Locke is a teammate, so he's not going to go out there and do anything that's going to risk turning him. If he had the run, he probably would have done something similar to, I think, probably how I ended up killing Darren Lognan last time in Dev Series, where he just didn't get the run off the corner, and I did, and no Brent swear into the back of him and spun him. But probably the similar thing is if he wasn't so inclined about being polite to him, he'd probably have a bit of a run here. I said he might be in a better spot now. He's ran wide, but he's ran wide early, which really opens up the corner. That said, I think I did just see the bump there, or it was the outside curve that he got a bit of wheel spin off. he'll be working his way through. One thing it is doing is he's most of these battle packs are backing themselves off. So Newing was an example, but he's recently gotten through on Daryl Callahan. I think he's had a mistake as well.
And he's just gotten through on the purple machine there of Darren Longman too, which he did actually by going the long way around the outside with a locked brake at the hairpin. Oh, and he's had another moment too, and he's contacted the fence. That will probably be race over for the SES Shogun number 17, and indeed it is. So just, I don't know, maybe there's just a setup gone the wrong way there, making the car too tail happy, because he was making some really good progress after that first off, but maybe something's still not quite right, and he's a non-finisher in this one, and he's going to be starting off the rear for the next one.
I think for Newing, I don't think I set up my play part to. I think generally speaking, is the run for that corner is, if anything, you're touching the exit curb rather than. I think he was hugging it, maybe trying to leave room for the car he was racing, but I think he was hugging that corner too tight, trying to get off. I think he was just the problem of trying to accelerate while turning. I think the rear end just didn't have any grip, and it wasn't a quick spin, it was just a slow pirouette as the grip went.
Yeah, that's right. So there's been a bit of a change in the back half of the top 10. Steve Warwick has made a mistake somewhere. He's fallen back to 13th. That puts Liccardo into 9th. Hans Brunswick now is in 10th place with Ross on his tail. Cox not too far behind as well. And then Steve Warwick in there that just dropped away from the back of this group of cars. So this is pretty much going to be the fight for the front row for the better part of the next, 13 laps. So we're 6 laps in, starting lap number 7. And I don't think anybody really wants to show their hand just yet, as you were saying, Rhodey. There's a few drivers here that are just quite content to sit there, and some drivers that'll put the pressure on, and some drivers not putting the pressure on. And out in front, that's sort of the same illustration that we've been seeing as well. As up a bit further, there's just in the front of the shot there, Lachlan Burke, right up the rear chuff now of Mitchell Steele Allison.
Yeah, there's definitely some drivers out there that are thinking big picture. Some of them, like I think Dane's a good example. This is his first race in the seasons. Obviously, same for Hans, 100% for Brennan Ross. There'll be a spree thing in the short picture of tonight, but Cox, as you mentioned, he's having a good run at the teams. He's having a good run to himself to the drivers. He'll be playing a bit more safely, but. Moving up to Steele Allison, yeah, he's got a good little run there. He's got Lockie Burke for company, but I think Burke is similar position. He's just sitting there, just sort of waiting to see what happens. He hasn't. I don't think he's actually really raced Steele Allison a whole lot, given that Burke was sort of, I wouldn't say in the twilight of his career, but he was sort of fading out at points of last year. At the same time, Steele Allison was coming in. So this may be the first time to actually race each other. I'm interested to see how things go, given that. I think Burke's last experience with Mitch for anything would have been just Mitch being in Dev Series. But yeah, he's just playing it gently, especially because I think they're also realising, a few drivers I know, I think Burke will be aware of it. I imagine Hans and Rossi are aware of it. I wouldn't be surprised if Dane's aware of it as well, of the inversion. And look, he could go for 7th here, but if he just sits here and runs to get out of top 10, you'll get thrown up towards the top end. They can maybe have a bit more of a battle there in the second race.
Yeah, that's right. A couple of car spots ahead of them, 3rd and 4th in contention. So Brandon Dostal's just starting to come back at Brenton Foley here, so the margin is only a couple of tenths per second. Dostal was about 3 tenths quicker than Foley last time around, who actually had a track strike the lap before that. That will be a bit of a talking point, is how many track strikes you actually do get around here, and it was of course increased a little bit for the Gold Coast given the nature of the circuit, back to normal programming for this round. Dostal started to get a little bit of a second wind here in the middle of this race, and really started to hone in on the back of the PBF 074 machine. And then some 8, nearly 9 seconds up the road. Quite incredible. This two pair are really still nose to tail. They have not been separated by probably more than this for most of the race. It's been within that half a second and for most of the race, and Noah's just starting to turn the wick up a little bit, just lap by lap, just a tenth quicker here or a half a tenth quicker there, and trying to shake the unshakable, I think is probably the right word, isn't it, Rhodey? We talked about put the pressure on your opponent. Stenberg won't be phased by this. The veteran knows how to get around. He's a little bit wide though. He's left the door a little bit open for Tara here. Down the inside, a little bit of contact, and I think Tara realises, yep, I was not far up enough there, and lets Stenberg have that one back through. So that's respectful racing between the two. Went for the dive. Stenberg left into space, but just a little bit too hot into turn 5 for Noah Tara. Made the contact, gives the spot back, and they press on.
Yeah, that was pretty fair racing. I could see that. I could. I mean, I saw it. So my response, I saw a door opening there for Noah to do something. Realistically, yeah, and he had to be alongside a lot sooner. You can do that, but really that's not the way you want to race, especially the way these guys have been racing, and I think the way these guys are going to be racing balls tonight. That's not really the way you want to go about making a move for position. And yeah, he was very lucky to not spin Kurt there. So Taupo did the right thing. He's reassessed that, but look, even in so much as he's now gotten into Stenberg's head, Stenberg knows that, not that he's going to do something like that again necessarily, but he knows that, Noah he's not just there, but he is like, he is willing to, put the nose somewhere. He is willing to make a move. Again, he's still got probably 7 or 8 laps before he really has to start looking at doing that. He doesn't have to start doing it this early. But it's just these little things, and it's just part of the process. It's just getting into the mind games, because he's only going to make one more move the entire race, Tara. So he's got time to do it, and he can just sit there and try and play with the mindset. You're right. The man that can't be moved in Kurt Stenberg. You'd like to try and get past him. When we saw the same sort of battles, Kurt was having the other way around, trying to get past Leonard Grossel last time we were here.
Year, yeah.
But yeah, it's a really good challenge for Noah. He's by no means new to any of this, but he hasn't necessarily had too many times where he's battling Stenberg in this way, and it's a good chance for him to really try and really try and get into his head and try and boil down the littlest, tiniest parts to try and make a move. Yeah, but right. Even with that move, the gap is now at 10 seconds. I think the gap is more or less for second between the first two, and the battle over third is almost going to be the length of the back straight at this point.
Yeah, that's right. There has been a change inside the top 10 as well, so the pressure's finally gotten to Dane Liccardo. He's unfortunately fallen down the order. He's actually gone a lap down, so he's made a mistake somewhere and had to probably come into the pits to sort something out. He's actually now retired along with Steve Warwick. So 3 drivers out of this one. That puts Hans Brunswick and Brendan Ross onto the front row of the grid as it sits right now for the next race coming up. But Daniel Cox might have a little something to say about that, at least from the Brendan Ross point of view. He's very much glued to the back of the second PBF Camaros, heading down the back straight here. This is what you were saying, Rody. The gap between third place and second place is probably pretty close to that whole length of that back straight there, heading down to the last sequence corners.
Yeah, I just had a look, and I just quickly clear out Dane. I think what happened there was a bit of a game for it or something, because he blipped out of existence for a second down the back straight, because otherwise he was running pretty well in there, the battle with Brunswick and Ross. But that's unfortunate for Dane. But yeah, sorry, I missed the second part of that.
Yeah. Nope, that's all okay. And waiting to see how that all pans out for the second race for when he comes back in. Foley still continuing to stave off the advances of one Brandon Dostal here. This has sort of stabilised. Their lap times are very, very similar. A lot of track strikes out there, I've noticed in the last lap. There was at least 5 drivers picking up a strike somewhere. Stenberg, Dostal, Speck, Cox and Palfrey, all with laps that were deleted on the last tour for track limits. So a few drivers pushing the envelope. The most obvious spot where it happens, there's 2 real obvious spots. One's at the last sequence of corners. If you get your line a little bit wrong, you can get in a bit of trouble there. But the one that a lot of drivers sort of get a bit concerned about is up at turn number 5. So that's where our race leaders are coming up to in the next few minutes. So we'll point out where that one is. So over the hill here at turn 4, and this right-hander here at turn 5. So taking a bit too much of the curb there and dropping your wheels behind the red and white Vallelunga curbing. That's where you end up with a track strike there. You just get a little bit too greedy, and it's a difficult corner to spot and make sure you get your line absolutely right, because a few drivers, you sit so low in the car, you end up trying to get that line right. You just take off a little bit more by accident, and the stewards say, nope, that's too much.
Yeah, it's a tricky corner, that one. It's one of those, it's by no means a unique corner to the supercars racing, but it's one of those corners where you effectively go past the corner before you then actually turn in. It's similar to the right-hander near hairpin at the bend on that short lap we've used for a couple of years, where you effectively go past the corner before you then actually start to take the corner itself.
Yes. Which
can make it very hard to decide exactly where you need to be when you're effectively having to look, we're not bound by the vision impairments of IRL supercars, but you'd almost be having to look through the helmet blade, or not the blade, but the seat extension that they've got to prevent lateral head movement.
Yeah, that's right. Steele Allison still holding off the advances of Lockie Burke here. This has been quite a good battle between two drivers that probably haven't had a chance to race against each other before, giving each other plenty of room. Burke trying to take a bit more of a different line through the last corner here, a bit of a sacrificing at the second last turn, and try and get a much squarer run onto the front straight, but it's quite a short front straight and couldn't get alongside there. A little bit of a pinch brake going into turn 1 for Steele Allison. So good exchange between these two. Is something going to come up and over the hill at turn number 5. So over through 4. Can Burke get the run here, dive down the inside? No, he's just not quite. He's not. I'm going to say he's close enough. I just don't think he's prepared to commit enough at this point with 6.5 laps to go.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. As I mentioned, there's just a little bit of contact there. It's interesting for Burke whether he's content to play it safe, especially given his time out of the season, out of the series. Whether he's going to have a bit of a crack, and to be fair, I think he's got the nous to know that he doesn't have to do it early. He doesn't have to do it right now. There's still about 4 or 5 laps before they have to do it. The one thing they could do if they're running good pace, and they are running pretty good pace right now, they might start to be able to just slowly buy into that margin that Specky's got on them. He's about 2 seconds ahead, but when they're not trying to pass each other, they're actually running pretty quickly as a 2-pair. They're probably going to start to buy down on Specky, and maybe to be fair for Berkey, that's where the thinking is being. You can see that they're starting to close down on Specky. And as fun as it would be to have a 2-car fight and to pass 1 car, he might be interested in making it a 3-car fight and passing the pair of them.
Yeah, so Spec's time there at a 28.4. And we look at the drivers for the 2 of them behind. We'll just wait for our timing to update. 28.1 and 28.1. And that's the second consecutive lap that I've been observing that they are faster than Luke Speck ahead of them. So that margin is slowly coming down by a couple of tenths here and there, but it's got to come down by a whole bunch more because they're 2.5 seconds behind. And Speck running wide there at turn 4 is not going to help his cause of hanging on to that 6th place. So he gives himself a bit more real estate on the exit of turn 5 there. But the 2 behind, they are definitely starting to pick the pace up a little bit, as you said, Ruddy. When they're not fighting each other, they are definitely quicker than the number 13 Camaro at the moment.
Yeah, I will say, actually, just looking at some of the battles we were flying out previously, the battle for the lead is out to half a second, so I think maybe a small mistake from Noah, or he's just putting a little bit in reserve just to probably see that swing back as well. The other one as well is it's out to a second now, the battle with Brendan Foley and Brandon Dostal over 3rd. I'm not sure whether Dostal's maybe burnt of his tyres, or maybe just maybe a lack of familiarity with the car at the back end of a tyre run, which they're going to be getting to now. But he has opened up to a second now, so it'll be interesting to see whether Dostal has anything left in the tank or whether he's going to run around and finish 4th.
Yeah, so this battle, as you said, has just started to elongate. The distance between the 2 cars has just started to grow a little bit over the last couple of laps. Foley just starting to be able to hold on to his tyres a little bit more toward the back end of the stint. Of course, they don't have to worry about that. There's a little bit of tyre conservation involved, but it's not as extreme as what it was last year with the way that the soft tyre rules and the tyre wear was set up, and he just seems to be handling it a little bit nicer at the moment. But it's not said done yet. There's still an opportunity there if he does make a mistake, and it will erase that deficit quite quickly between the 074 and the 76. And that is over 3rd place. And that I can't believe the gap is 16.5 seconds. The 2 out in front have just been in a class of their own. And we were thinking that the lap times that were going to be, the fastest lap of the race at the moment is 25.3 to Stenberg. But these 2 are head and shoulders above the rest on pure race pace. They have got something that the others just don't have at the moment. And I see the background there, the car of Will Devonish, which of course is being piloted by Scott Murrell this round. But what to think of if Will actually was here? He'd probably be up in this fight as well, I would imagine, and we'd have a 3-way fight. But that's the way that things go sometimes. The calendars always don't align, but we've got 3 3/4 laps to go, and Stenberg has led all of them so far.
Yeah, he's doing a good job. He's just Brown's just done what he needed to do. He got a really good start. Probably a bit of, we talked about the mind games, a bit of a statement early to set that lap. He is 3/10, well, more or less 3/10 quicker than Noah's best in this race, and near on a second over everyone else. Very much making his mark, and that's the reason why they've gapped out to now 17 seconds and growing. But yeah, he's put himself in a good spot. He did exactly what he needed to do. He got himself the lead early, so he could dictate the pace that he ran. Whereas that's the disadvantage that Noah's had, is he's had to race the way that Kurt wants to race. He wants to keep up, and it's really why we see the gap elongate for a bit, and why it's come back down again now is maybe Noah's taken a little bit in reserve, and now he's bringing it back into the back end of this. But that's sort of the thing, is if you're following someone around, you have to run at their pace to be able to pass them. Whereas if you're in the lead car, you have the option to delay throttle, you have the option to brake early, you have the option to drive a little bit less conventionally, but ultimately drive the track at your pace, as long as you don't make it terribly easy for the guy behind you to get past you, which is the advantage Kurt's got. So in theory, the tyre advantage would go to Stenberg at the back end of this. But we're interested to see how they've actually gone about getting their pace. I mean, Stenberg clearly has gone quicker, so in theory, a bit more tyre wear there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's in a good spot right now, and it's very much. I think Noah's had a chance to see where Kurt's weaknesses are, but also Kurt's had a chance to see where Noah's weaknesses are. So he knows where Noah's likely to not make a move, or where he could make a move but then be weak in the next corner, so he could potentially go back on him again. We're going to see how this rolls out. I wouldn't be surprised to do the same thing as we saw last year. This comes down to ultimately the last 3 corners.
Yeah, I agree. So Noah's already shown his hand at turn 5, and it didn't come off. So it'd be sort of a miss to to try that move again. Stenberg will probably be quite awake to that and wants to make sure that he doesn't do that again. Now, Noah's had a fairly decent run here off turn number 8. So looking right under the rear bumper here, heading down into the hairpin. Stenberg covers the line, leaves just a car's width worth of room going into the hairpin here. So the pace has started to ratchet up a bit. Noah tried to square the corner off a little bit, got a little bit tail happy, and couldn't quite get the power down. So he loses a little bit of ground to Stenberg. It's not a lot, but he's still in the slipstream here, and now heading down to the final sequence of corners. Pushing the limit of braking here as well, going into the final sequence of corners. So it's just started to go up a notch here. The bar is being raised notch by notch, inch by inch, and it's 0.3 of a second between these two as they enter the 18th lap. Very quickly with where everything else is at the moment. So the battle for 10th is still quite hot here. So Brunswick holds a front row start. Ross holds the 10th place spot, which is the pole position spot for the next race. And then Cox has not been able to wrestle this spot away from him yet. Ross is putting the car in all the right places at the moment. And well, he's only got a lap or 2 laps to hold on to it here. And he'll start on the front row alongside Hans Brunswick for the next race. Brent Foley is the margin to Foley and Dostal has closed up astronomically again. So this is again like the battle for first and second, the ebbs and flows, the swings and the roundabouts. This one is not over with yet either. Foley had must have been a poor lap over the last couple of laps. He's been a 10th or 2 slower than Dostal. That's why this margin has closed up in the last little bit. And that battle you're talking about between Speck and Steele Allison and Burke, this margin has definitely shrunk a lot in the last little bit, but it needs to shrink a lot further and a lot faster. But this picture is the 2 cars behind are getting bigger in the rear mirror of the Speck Camaro over the last couple laps. There's just been a change for position 3 as well. Just saw it off camera. Brenton Foley's lost P3 at the hairpin to Brandon Dostal. So that one is another fight going to go right down to the very end here. Let's pick up the leaders because they're on the final tour.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's been a good run from Stenberg. He's got 2 sectors and a bit to try and hold off Tara. Tara's only really made a look, from what we've seen, twice. Runs at turn 5, which he just passed. The other one he did have a look at a couple laps ago, was the entrance to the last couple of corners, that run off the back straight where a conventional line is brake and then turn in, but you can very much straight line that corner and dive it down the inside. It's a bit of a cheeky move, but if you got the run off the hairpin, it's probably the best way to do it. And I think at this point, that's going to be Tara's best opportunity to get a pass done here. Yep,
he's too far back now to have a go at the hairpin on this last lap, so he's just going to have to make sure he gets his line right. He just needs to be a lot closer to the rear wing of the Camaro as they exit the hairpin. Got to get the power down just right. He's had a moment. He's had a bit of a moment on the exit curb there, and Stenberg's pulled away. He's pulled a little bit of a margin. I think that's the insurance policy that he needs to head off any last attempts here. There won't be any last lap heroics. Tara will be super deep on the brakes, but it won't be enough. Stenberg will lead this one start to finish, and with it will grab the all-time ASR wins record that he was sharing with Luke Rosella. He now stands alone at the top.
He does. So great work from Kurt Stenberg. And I did talk to him, and I'll obviously cover it in the interviews later, but I talked to him before the race, and he wasn't particularly a fan of this track, and said of all the tracks to do it, of all the tracks to take it away from Rosella, this would definitely be one of the tracks to do it at. So he's added that one, and I believe that, so I'll have to go back and check the stats. We were talking earlier, that might potentially, no, it wouldn't be actually, because he beat Grossel last year.
Yeah.
But a good run from him. And actually, speaking of good runs, and they have come across the line now, so it is official. Dostal up to third in the end of that was a good run. Just managed to make the tyre life work over Foley.
And that's his first ASR Supercars podium as well for Brandon Dostal, I'm pretty sure. So very good job for him.
I'd say so. Sounds about right, yeah.
Brent Foley home in fourth, Egmanis fifth, and Steele Allison sixth at the end of the day. So something happened to Luke Speck on that final lap. He had a shocker. He had a 1 minute 29.7 and finished in seventh. Brunswick actually up to 8th, Ross to 9th, and Cox to 10th. So Lockie Burke had a moment, and he dropped out of the top 10. So that puts Cox on pole for the top half inversion coming up next at the expense of... so he's got Lockie Burke to thank, count his lucky stars for that one.
He does, yeah. That was looking like it was going to be an all-guest front row, which would be an interesting play. But it's just so happened that Berkey's wobbled just enough that he hasn't put himself to... I'm not sure if the wobble... to be fair, I'm not sure he was big picture thinking that much. He might have just probably a genuine wobble. I was thinking in the back of my head, maybe he just wobbled in a convenient way to just slot himself into that gap. But looking at how tight that gap was to the line, I think he would have had to try. He would have had to get a crowbar to force himself into that gap between Ross and Cox. They were 4/10 apart. But yeah, that was of all the times to have that wobble, that was really not the time to do it. So he's going to start 11th. He's going to start just behind Noah Tara and diagonally back from Kurt Stenberg.
Yeah.
And yeah, Daniel Cox for probably be his first Supercars pole.
Yep, starting on pole.
And Ross and Brunswick to start, or Ross started, I think Ross has started the front row, but we're going a few years back for that. I think we're going back a while for Brunswick to be in the top 2 rows as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a bit of an interesting look to the top half of the grid for the inversion race coming up in just a few minutes' time. But apart from the Newing incidents, it actually looked pretty clean from what we were seeing in that one. So that's it's a good start to the night. Just waiting to get a couple of things all sorted and ready to go for this one. It will be a fairly quick turnaround, I would think, for this next one. And be interesting just to see how everything sort of gets on in race number 2 with the top half inversion. It's the one that sort of a few people last year sort of had a bit of a think about, hang on a minute, is this actually the right thing? Are we doing the right thing by by having the top half inversion and everything that went with it? A few people were a bit apprehensive about it. It actually presented, I think, some of the best racing we had last year with some drivers that not normally run up the front, having a chance to to be able to defend and get a good haul of points, but also showcasing the skills of some of the faster drivers and how they not only could make their way through the pack, but do it cleanly and quickly. And some of those drivers that were starting off the pole might be out to like a good couple of second lead, and then they'd have to spend the next part of the race burning up their tyres to try and get themselves back into a position to contend for a victory.
It's almost in a way the speed comparison. The F1's not quite the example I'm looking for, but it's along a similar vein. It's a similar thing where it's almost like a handicap race style. Like the Stall Gift is probably a good example actually for that. But it's a handicap race style because there are guys that are probably not too far off the pace, or especially last year on a Dev Series was another good example to a degree, although we'll ignore that I started on pole. Dev Series was another good example where some guys were probably maybe a couple of tenths of pace off of the front runners, off the race winners, but not so far off pace that they couldn't hold them up and compete for a position if they had the lead in around a track like this.
Mm.
So I think what you found was those guys. I think Logner might have been one of them, that somebody that just parked it through and just really shoved me out the way and drove off to like a 5-second win. But for those guys, that's the opportunity it presents them. But we saw this last year with it was a bit of a shake-up. I think it was ultimately race 3 that Grosser was in the order, but part of the reason he was in there was because of the inversion to begin with, and the lack of passing that was happening at the front in race 2. But yeah, it's a good opportunity for some of those guys. So Cox would be a good example. Maybe he's not quite necessarily. Actually, he's had a good run this year, so I'm not going to turn around and say he isn't of the pace. But especially now, I think the good example is I'm not going to be including the likes of, say, maybe a Stenberg and a Tara in this. My idea of what the front row is for these guys to be battling with is the likes of the Foley and the Dostal, given the 18-second gap, I think, at the end between second and third. But yeah, the likes of the Cox, the Brunswick, the Ross. I mean, we know the latter two can go quicker, but again, they've been out of the seat for 6 months, at least in terms of AMS Gen 3, and possibly longer, I think. I'm not sure when it was that we last had Hans in the car. I know Ross is something like 6 months. But those guys, at least on pace tonight, like, they're probably of a pace where if they were in front of the likes of a Dostal, of a Foley, of an Igmanus, of a Newing, that they could probably, make something of it. It wouldn't just be a right corner comes, they get out broken, they get, potentially just out driven and off they go. They'd make a fight of it. So that's, I think, what we're going to see. The big challenge is going to be, and I don't think it's going to be too much an issue. We know that the two guys that are going to likely be the battle for the win, outside of something really calamitous happening, which, to be fair, we saw how that went for, I'm pretty sure it was Newing in race 1. We've seen what that's what that does, it'd be interesting to see that outside of something like that happening for them. I expect them to be the race winners. The question will be how long it takes them to get through the pack. I don't think it'll be too long. They've had experience with this stuff in the past, not say this directly, but they've had experience with racing around most of the guys they're racing with in the past. And like they're good operators. They know how to pass cars. They're not in a position where they're really quick drivers, but they cannot pass. So the challenge for them will just, I think, really be how long. And the argument will be, I think, for Tara, if he can get a good start, is trying to pick it through smartly, but trying to almost do it in a way that maybe he makes a move that Stenberg can't make, and trying to, not too different to, I suppose, the race you get in Super 3, for Super 3 outright, by using the Super 2 guys at the back as padding. Same thing will be for Noah if he gets to the lead early. He'll be trying to use as many of these cars as padding over Stenberg to try and ultimately the same sort of thing as we've seen in Dev Series, we've seen in the past. He'll try and pull like a 4 or 5 second lead, hopefully before Stenberg gets through the rest of the cars.
Yeah, that's right. Well, speaking of getting through the cars, a number of drivers coming around to do the practice starts for this one, and also just doing a couple.
I lost him.
So ticking down the clock here towards the last few minutes of practice session, and still waiting for a couple of drivers to make their re-emergence into the circuit, but it doesn't look like that's actually going to happen. So we're waiting for a couple of drivers to get ready to go here, and if they're not back in by the time the clock advances, then the race continues. There is no hanging around waiting for that. They'll have to come back for race number 3. But good result so far for all of the people that were in for substitutes, and we're about to see what some of them can actually do as we get ready to go for the second race of the night, race number 6 of the championship. So there's a lot of storylines from that, not only that first race, but a handful of storylines from the second race here to come as well, especially with the mixed up grid. It doesn't happen all that often. It's one of those things that is quite a unique thing to ASR Supercars, as everybody starts to line up here. And we've got 17 cars, so there's only the 2 cars that didn't make it back. Liccardo officially now out, and Jacob Palfrey, not sure where he is, but that will elevate Steve Warwick and Luke Newing a couple of spots on the back of the grid, so we'll close up those 16th and 17th spots is where they will they'll move up to when we roll around on the formation lap here. So away we go. Formation lap for race number 2 tonight. So Daniel Cox, been a while since he started up this high on the grid, and he'll start from pole position for this one with the top 10 of the grid being inverted from the race 1 results. I know there's only 17 cars, would be a little bit less, but the inversion is done based on the runners and the finishing positions from race number 1. So we have to go from that. Brendan Ross is going to start alongside him. Been a while since Rossi started on the front row as well for PBF Race Engineering, starting P2. Hans Brunswick for Redstall PBF Blackshaws in P3, and Luke Speck will be starting in position 4. So he finished quite well in that last race, but just dropped off a little bit late, finishing 6th in the overall order. Mitchell Steele-Allison starting behind him in 5th place. Alongside him is Curtis Sigmanis for CRE Engineering. Then Brenton Foley, who lost out in the latter stages of the first race to Brandon Dostal, who starts alongside him in 8th. So the two of them set to resume their battle. And then Noah Tara, CRE Amped Up Racing number 26, starting in 9th. Kurt Stenberg, the race 1 winner, starting in 10th. So if he gets one of his customary quick starts again, it'll be interesting to see how he goes. He'll be starting on the right-hand side of the grid, the pit side of the grid, like he was in race number 1. Lockie Burke has missed the start. He already actually might have been on the grid and then gone back to the lane. So he's going to start this one from pit lane. So he's got an eternity to wait for where that first sector marker comes up. So let's see how he goes. Darren Lognan's going to start in 12th. Scott Murrell in 13th. Lockie in 14th, of course, from 11th on down is where they finished in race number 1. 15th for Darryl Callaghan, and then 16th for Steve Warwick, and 17th for Luke Newing. And that is the 17 cars that we have in the field, with Liccardo not suiting up and Palfrey an AWOL.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to Palfrey. Liccardo is not confident with his PC. It did a update halfway through race 1, which explains his drop, but he's looking a bit shaky with it. And also, I did catch Burke. I don't know if it was a hardware issue or what, but he pulled into the wall on the inside on the run down to 1 and actually clipped, I think it was Tara and Stenberg as he straight lined 1 and into the gravel trap. So I'm not sure what that was, but we'll see, I guess, in the first lap or so whether he's got whatever that was fixed or not.
Yep, we're just waiting for someone to be put into place there by the game. Someone just slightly out of position. This is, of course, race number 6 of the championship, second race tonight. How do we go from the start? It's not a bad start for Cox, but it was an even better start for Brunswick. He's looking down the inside here. He doesn't quite get the nose far up enough. Ross got a reasonable start as well, right around the outside. And can he be in position for the chicane? He's over the rear quarter panel of Cox, and they'll run side by side through turn 2.
Oh, Cox is wide.
Cox is wide, he's on the grass, up through turn 3, promotes Brunswick to P2, promotes Ross to the lead of the race. Steele Allison now going to go down the inside of the Cox number 94, down through the hill as well. It's getting really wild and woolly in the back of the back half of the top 10 here. Foley has now looking at buying in here on the machine of Daniel Cox as they go into turn number 6. Wes Stenberg and Tara and all of this, they were almost exchanging paint a couple of cars further back in the field. Stenberg going the long way round here and looking down the inside of Cox at turn number 8. He's got it done just behind here in Foley. So he goes through to P6. Cox drops some wheels through the grass. He is sunk like a stone. He has lost a lot of spots on this opening lap. He's all the way now down to P8, and they're tagging between Taro and Stenberg. We're tagging going into the hairpin.
That's, yeah, definitely more willing start to the race than in race 1. Burke's gotten away as well, so he's running around at the back. We'll see him later in the race. But Stenberg already on his way up past Spec. So they get a really poor run out of that corner. He got passed by Foley. He's just been passed by Stenberg, and Tara will be in there as well. But yeah, I think fair to say for Cox's behalf, he just got more or less bullied out of the way by all these bigger cars.
Oh yeah, he absolutely got an average start, and he was absolutely mugged going into turn 1, and then he just lost spots hand over fist all the way through the opening half of the lap, all the way down the hairpin. I think he's stabilised it now into P8, but he's got Brandon Dostal and Curtis Igmanis right on his tail. Igmanis himself, I think, has lost about 5 spots in all of that mid-pack shuffle there. Oh, just ahead of Stenberg, there's a bit of a just keeping an eye on the background here. There was a bit of a dive from Foley, and I think we might have potentially one of the cars around in the back of the shot. Yeah, so Luke Speck has had a moment. So that's the second of the SES Shogun entries that's had an issue, and I think at the same part of the track as the sister car did in race number 1. So this will be an interesting bit of viewing, as he was in behind Tara. Oh God, Tara, how on earth did he save that? And then down the inside there, oh yeah, same part of the track, and just plump ran into the side of the number 26 there. I still don't know how Tara saved that coming over turn 4. That was a monumental effort.
That was, yeah, it was a really good catch to bring that back onto the track. It was trying to spin like 2 or 3 different times there. So I think that was kind of, I maybe expected him I think probably expected him to not make as good a run off the corner as he did. He probably expected him to be a little bit slower to sort of fade away, but he didn't. So that was why Spec ended up running into him and just spinning like he did. So he's dropped to the back of that train. He's now back on the back of Murrell and Callahan, so he'll work his way back up.
It's a much more compressed field, I think we can probably be fair to say, for the opening part of this race. The field itself, if you go all the way down to Luke Speck, it's separated by 8.9 seconds first to 16th, and then Burke is the exception there because he started from the pit lane. A lot of it's happening because of what's happening out in front, where Ross heads the field from Brunswick. Stenberg's now moved his way through to P3 and was having a look at Brunswick down the front straight, but didn't quite commit to the move. And Tara hasn't been able to go with Stenberg in this opening sort of sequence. He's now stuck in the queue in 6th and got a little bit of work to do.
Oh, he's nearly spun it again too. I think he tried to brake on the grass there into, I think it was that turn 9.
Turn 9, yeah.
Really good job catching that. Second time he's now at risk of getting past from Dostal, although I think he's going to probably show Dostal a bit of a strong arm and get him to back off.
Yeah. So Stenberg with a really good run out of the hairpin here on Brunswick, and this will probably set the move up down into the last sequence of corners. And he's made some good tracks. No, decides not to. Decides just to put the queue in the rack and just wait for a little bit longer here for a better opportunity. And this group of 5 cars has kicked away here after Tara making that bit of a mistake there. He is in the back of shot, and as you said, got the number 77 all alongside him here. Brunswick, threshold of braking, going into turn number 1, left the door open, though Stenberg goes through. Pretty easy pass at the end of the day, textbook pass, and Ross a bit wide at the chicane, so you get the impression that this is only a matter of time now before Stenberg finds his way through the lead. Is it here at 5?
Oh.
It is here at 5, and Foley looked to do the same thing on Steele Allison in the back of the shot here. He spies a podium position possibly coming here with Dostal a bit further down the order. Ross tries to fight it on all the way to turn 7, but has to unfortunately concede, and through goes the number 1, to position number 1 on the road again, he can start setting sail for the finish line here, with Noah Tara still in 6th place.
I'll be honest. I wanted Rossi to make a bit more of a fight of that. Not that he rode the red carpet, but I was wanting that to sort of play out over a lap or so. But I think Rossi's been honest in sort of his own pace expectations. I think even starting up as high as was
Steve Warwick
shock unto itself.
Gone deep. We're just looking back to see he was in P8. He's gone sailing deep at the hairpin here. That's a bit upsetting for the number 63. He's going to come on in 16th and have to do a bit of hard work there and go back ahead of Scott Murrell and co that are just ahead of him. But he was heading that next group of cars, so he'd managed to get ahead of Daniel Cox, who had sunk to 9th and now goes back up to 8th. Igmanis has got a fight on his hands here with Newing going into turn number 1, and he's protecting the inside here and trying to force the SES Camaro to go the long way around at 1, which he decides, nope, I can't make that happen, and I'm going to wait for another opportunity, which might come as soon as turn 5, but I think Newing will probably be pretty aware that this is a difficult part of the track to pass, and you need something to happen there, like a mistake from Igmanis to really capitalise on it. He just wasn't there at the time. That pinch brake sent the number 51 a little bit wide at turn 5.
Yeah, but he is still floating there, and I can see that was maybe another little error from Igmanis there. Nothing major. It's just you can start to see maybe some of the pressure for Newing's kicking in there, and I think for Newing's point, he probably knows that he's running quicker. I mean, just looking at last laps through, there were the difference was north of a second by the look of looks like by the time he had a bit of an issue there. But about a second difference in pace. So Newing can sort of pick to go where he wants, but I think he's going to try and get it done sooner rather than later, because the sooner he can get through, or past Igmanis, the sooner he can get to Cox, the sooner he can maybe then make strides further up to the likes of Dostal and Seal Allison. And there he goes. That was a pretty big, actually it was too big of a dive. He's had to probably burn a track cut in the process.
He would have burnt at least 1, if not 2 there. He was just trying to go for the late braking, but because he was offline, just picked up all the crap and the marbles that are on the outside of the track, and that sent him, off to the never never. Did actually pretty well to try and make the apex at the third last corner, and then Igmanis thankfully saw him coming, and he scooted across there and through the, I guess not the escape road, but the grass, and went from there. Now, what's happened to Igmanis? He's had a bit of a moment going up the hill here. Has something gone on with the 51? I'm not sure here, because Newing's gone through. And there was a few others that happened there. Did he too with the grass? Did he have a really bad sector? I didn't quite see it. Yeah, he did. 31.6 in the middle sector, and it came over the top of the hill, and he lost a ton of spots there. So that falls him right back down the order. That gives Newing that free kick that he was looking for a free kick, and I think he just got it.
Yeah, it was just a little. I did catch the back end of that. He was just having a little bit. I think it was just a little wide, a little bit too much on the pedal through turn 2, and just had the rear start to come out, and in the process of catching it, it's then flying back the other way, and he's had to throw it onto the grass to then gather the car up.
So Stenberg clearing off out in front, 4.2 seconds of margin over this man, Brenton Foley. So he's in P2, and then Noah Tara's just made his way through to 3rd place. He's just managed to pick off Brendan Ross. Steele Allison and Dostal have also managed to get past Hans Brunswick as well. So Brunswick's had a couple of bad laps where he's been, a few positions pinched off him as we're getting up to the halfway point of this second race now. So P1 pretty much academic at this point. Stenberg can do as he pleases. He just needs to toddle along and not make any mistakes. He's just slowly starting to disappear out of visual range for Brent Foley. Margin now out to 5 seconds. And then the real interesting bit is, Tara has going to close that margin down to Foley. It stands at about 1.5 at the moment. And then what can Ross do? Second of the PBF entries. Be good handy points for them if Ross can stay up here in the top sort of 5 or 6 spots.
Yeah, I think we're going back a while, perhaps. I think Boak has had a couple of really stellar rounds of points, but I think just broadly speaking, I think we're going back to the time when Ross was actually a teammate alongside Foley for when we were seeing when we were last seeing PBF cars this far up as a 2-pair. Previously to that, going back to when sort of 2020 when Boki and Foley were having a crack at the Drivers' Championship. But it's good to see, and good to see like Hans is tight in there as well. He's not quite maybe had the pace or the racecraft of Ross to keep with him, but he's doing a good job, and he's probably a good bit of a challenge for the likes of Steele Allison. He hasn't really had a chance to race either of them. Same with Dostal. Dostal's been able to see what these two are up to, but he's never actually had a chance to race them because he's been Super 2 until this year. So it's really interesting to see sort of cat amongst pigeons, but seeing if the old dogs can teach these guys some new tricks.
Yeah, they are. There's just some old dogs just get pick it up a little bit quicker than others. It's almost like they never left, is it? When it comes to the likes of Brendan Ross and Hans Brunswick, they've proven that they jump back in, and it doesn't take them too long to get reacclimatised with it. Might not be on the front running pace, but it doesn't take too long for them to get used to some things. I mean, I think a few people are saying the same thing about me when it comes to Dev Series. I just struggle to do the practice, but give time on the Friday night, and just to get your eye in, and you can at least be half competent. Especially in the lower tiers of the development series. If you're there just to have a nice night and a good time, at least as long as you're competitive, you can walk away with your head held high and be reasonably happy with your night of work. These guys are starting to get a little bit too close to the limits there. There's a bit of squirming under brakes going into the final sequence corners. And Turra has now disappeared up the road and has caught Brent Foley.
Yeah, so this is a big little challenge for these two now, given that they've had a chance to race each other across the last sort of, we're going into nearly 18 months now. But maybe not so directly, given that generally Turra has been, as we've seen tonight, been the sort of the running in that lead train, and Foley's sort of been the best of the rest. But a big little battle here. I was expecting maybe Kurt would play some mind games and maybe just sort of float there just in the sort of middle distance and sort of maybe wait until Noah was through and then really crank it up then. But no, he's already out for a 7-second lead. He's going to basically set himself up for a good position. At this point it is academic. He's going to require external factors like a safety car pretty much for Stenberg to have any risk of losing that or unlikely given the room he's got to play with. It could be something with a tyre, but Turra is now through just to thereabouts. He's sort of forced Foley into a bad spot. That said, Foley has got a slightly better run out of the hairpin, so Foley could have a crack back at this in the last couple of corners. I probably wouldn't, but he could. But he's decided to play a little smarter. He's backed out of it, so he's going to follow Noah around for a little bit. Hopefully Noah can give him a little bit of a tow, and that'll give Foley a bit of padding back to, if we go for race 1, Dostal at the end of this.
Yeah, well, for Foley, he knows the podium's important. So he's looking at it from a point of view of, knowing, we talk about this in the development series a lot, knowing who your fight is with, all right? His fight's not with Noah Turra. His fight's with himself and the podium, and also with Brandon Dostal, if going off the evidence from race 1. Dostal's currently tied up with his substitute teammate for the night, Brendan Ross. So, Ross is doing a really good service to the team here by keeping Dostal behind and allowing Foley to go and put some good points on the board and pick up a podium potentially in this race. Actually, just want to go back and have a look at the results for this year for Brent Foley. He's actually chasing his first podium of the season if he can get that done. He's had a 7th, a 5th, a 10th, a 4th, and the disqualification. That was the big talking point coming out of the Gold Coast round. He was actually disqualified from the opening race for failing to follow or be compliant with the tyre rules. So very, very unusual scenario for Brent Foley. He's normally very meticulous about these things, and he was pinged for having the wrong tyres on.
Then actually, importantly to note on that point, up until the stewards' inquiry for that, he did actually already have his first podium of the year because race 1 was where he came across the line in second. Because,
that's right, and he lost it.
Yeah, so he lost it. So this would be the first one he actually has a pretty good chance of keeping, based on the way his racing has gone tonight.
That's right. His teammate has actually done pretty well. Actually, Dostal's actually lost a spot now to Mitchell Steele Allison and all of this. So this actually gets better for Brendan Foley in terms of, he doesn't have to worry about contending with a pretty rapid number 77 Ford Mustang in this race. And the best that Dostal can do here here is probably fight his way back through to 4th over the next 8 laps or so, and start alongside Foley on the second row of the grid for the last race of the night, which should be race 7 of the championship.
Yeah, it depends on what sort of pace Dostal's holding on to. I know that I think he ultimately won that battle in race 1 through better tyre life. We're going to see if he has enough tyre life to try and make up a fight. What's currently a 5.5 second margin, it's probably be closer to 6, maybe 7, depending on how long it takes him to get through. If he is going to get through.
Mistake from Steele Allison on the exit of turn 9. That allows Dostal to get back through here, and that's a pretty easy pass at the end of the day. Oh no, not for Dostal. No. He's gone way too deep. He actually overcommitted to the corner. He's actually going to drop more spots. So he drops down to P8. So that was looking like it was an academic pass at that point, and Dostal's just way too late on the brakes going into turn number 10. He didn't need to go that deep.
No, I think he was maybe trying to just lock the move away, just make sure that Steele Allison didn't have a chance to go back at him. But yeah, he was that far wide, and I mean, there's a bit of the way that the geometry works in that area. There's a bit of a crest he's come over. It's probably delay breaking on the brakes because it's a bit smoother the run on the racing line on the left-hand side through there. So yeah, that, and he might have been all right, but I think he was just limit braking. He pinched a brake. We saw the things wiggle. I think probably catching a rear lock. And I think by the time of point, he might have pulled it up, but then because he pinched it, swiggled and wiggled the car and had to get off the brake to catch it. That was when he was out of money. He's at least done a good job of avoiding being too far in the gravel. He's managed to recover. He's going to be the back of this train now. He's 2 seconds clear of Newing. And the way this train's going, he might catch him again. But yeah, I think realistically 4th is his best chance now.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of Newing, he's actually managed to catch back up to the rear of Hans Brunswick here, so he's made some good progress. And Newing, I think, is probably targeting a 4th place finish. You can just see it, a couple of cars up the road with Brendan Ross, so that'd be a good return for him after that incident in race number 1, and after starting from pretty much the back of the grid. This pack ahead of him is really starting to get quite congested. Steele Allison's had a fairly decent run through through this lap. He's throwing down the gauntlet now to Ross in the 046, who's getting quite squirmy under brakes here.
Oh, Hans out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's right. And Hans, he's made a bit of a right hash of that. And Newing will go through here. Hans will concede, I would imagine. Yeah, he has. He's got to gives that up on the inside. So there's one spot for Newing, and Newing's got to be really careful here because Steele Allison's really giving Brendan Ross a big hurry up at the moment.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of the amount of checkup that is in Ross's train. What's actually currently just become Steele Allison's train. There's a good battle going on there now.
And they're both off the road. Yep, and they're both off the road. Oh, and Dostal got a whack for his trouble as well.
The point I was going to make was they lost nearly half a second to Dostal, but it's now they've lost all of it because he's back in this battle now.
Yeah, and Luke Newing basically got the free kick of all free kicks there. And actual fact, Steele Allison managed to get through Brunswick's to the grass. And comes back on somewhere. So I thought Newing had got the lot of them, but Steele Allison managed to get back ahead in all of this. And let's see what happens now down here at the hairpin this lap. Does Mitchell protect the inside? He does. Going to force Newing to do what Dostal did and go the long way. Now, he's done this once before. Go the long way. It takes 2 to tango, and they leave each other the room. And he'll get the better line here for Newing. He'll get the better drive off, but the inside line goes to the Mustang, and under braking he's not going to be clear enough here to be able to get past the car, so they're going to be forced to run side by side. This is what you call just, you're giving up time at this point to the car behind. Dostal's now just erased that whole entire margin. Now Newing's got about 3/4 of the car clear. Now he's fully clear. Now he's got to protect the inside completely or go deep under brakes. He goes for the latter, and now that shoots him through the corner. He really needed to protect the inside there and just take his normal line. He would have come out the other side a little bit a little bit nicer and been able to drive away. But at the end of the day, he's done it the hard way. He's finally gotten through up to P4, which he probably would have seen the distance and thought, yep, I can get that. That'd be good for me.
I think to a degree, although it wouldn't be what he was planning on. I think realistically, though, I didn't think he was too much concerned about Steele Allison behind, because he knew Dostal was right there, and he knew Dostal was, if there was an opening, Dostal was probably inclined to stick his nose in it, and that Steele Allison would have to worry about defending that over trying to get back past Newing again. That, and the fact that Newing is kind of checked out, even just in the last sort of third of the lap sort of suggests maybe that still Allison, still Allison would feel that maybe Newing isn't his fight and that Doss still is. But yeah, it was very, very good sort of play of the surroundings there for Newing to get through the way he has. Unfortunately, that's resulted in Ross back to 7th, although he is now back on this train. And Brunswick has actually dropped. Oh, he dropped a couple of seconds now. He's actually down in a. Oh no, he's in a bit of Newing's lane. He's not far off of actually a battle with Darren Logden over at 9th.
Just saw a replay there. Daniel Cox, the third victim of the night at turn number 5, self-inflicted victim, I think, is of turn number 5 tonight. Going around there, so that dropped him out of what was 11th place, and now actually behind recovering Spec, who's moved himself up. So it's been a tale of two thirds tonight for SES Shogun. They had one car not finished the first race, one car with a decent point scoring position, I think it was 6th. Now they've got a car that's, again, decent point scoring position in 4th, and a car that had an incident. This one's not retired, but it's just slowly moving back through the field. But it's these are the two that sort of came together last year, Newing and Spec, and we're sort of looking at it and thinking, you know what, that's actually a pretty decent pairing. They could be, you know, top 3 or 4 teams championship this year, and not so much considered for challenging for wins, but good solid podium challenges. It hasn't materialised yet.
No, look, the one thing I can give them, at least based off the 2 races, or 1 and a bit races so far tonight, is they are doing it. They're going to walk away with a better points haul than CRE. CRE going to get some, but Morrell's just. Morrell's scoring points is what matters. He's just plodding along there at the back end of the grid, but he is scoring some points. Marnus has some good runs. He's currently sitting at 11th, so actually I think they will come, at least in the first 2 races, come fairly close potentially to outscoring them, if not too far off. Yeah, I think their battle at this point would then be with, I think CRA ANZAC will be the next run, which they've been doing okay. Their big, to a degree, their big hinge point was actually Burke, but he's still running better than Cox by virtue of
that yes.
Burke recovering, Burke recovering and then Cox's spin. So they're 7 seconds apart now. It'll be interesting to see. I think we're going to see. We've seen it off the first 2 rounds. I think we're seeing it again. We're going to see just a complete upending or a partial upending of the expected order coming in the team's points out tonight.
Yeah, I think so. And Burke's actually driven really well since starting from pit lane. Like, he's got a top 10 in sight here. If he can get past Igmanis, Locke's only just a few, car lengths up the road with 3.5 laps to go. So a top 10 result here for Burke is definitely within grasp. He's pushing Igmanis pretty hard at the moment, who I actually was thinking was probably going to, push up a bit more. I would have been expecting him to be sort of around sort of 6th, 7th, 8th, that sort of positional ranking for him at this stage of this race, considering where he started. But he fell down the order at the start of lap 1 and has not recovered.
I don't know for Igmanis. He might have just got sort of same degree as Cox, same as in the latter stages is there for Ross and for Brunswick. Might have just sort of got pressured out of it, just by the onrush of cars trying to get through in the early stages, and was just being a bit too, well, I don't want to say too polite, because politeness is one of the things we'd like to see more of in racing, but probably just being a bit too nice to the guys around him and letting them through. Oh, actually, that'll answer that question. Burke's picked up, I think we just watched him do it too, he just picked up his last track cut.
Quite literally as he was doing it, just at the final sequence of corners. So he's going to tour the lane. So what a shame to steal a quote from one of our good friends over at ARW Stairs. He will be bitterly disappointed with that.
Absolutely, yeah. So he's going to, he'll come back out. I think he will come back out, actually come back out pretty close to Steve Warwick, who's had a, he was in the gravel of points, Steve Warwick, so he's had probably not a notable race, but the way things are going, they might have a little bit of a battle at the back end of this, but that's going to hurt. Although, it'd be interesting to see now with that done, it's hard to keep, say hard, it's not really easy way for us to broadcast to keep track of it, but given the racing, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the only one. He's only got 3 laps left to go, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's the only one that potentially is at a risk of picking up a drive-through. Yeah,
the top 3 are pretty much a no-risk situation anyway. Igmanis actually got stuck in the last lap around as well, and he was actually being pressured by Burke at that point, so they both got done for a track strike. It was just that Burke had one too many on his on the naughty list already, and that was one too many and stepped over the line. So McManus is probably one to be watching out for in the next little bit, just to see what happens with him. Who's currently now all over the back of Locke. So this is for 10th place here, and these Inter-car teammates, they shouldn't be making contact, but that's pretty forceful from McManus down the inside there, and Locke did leave him the required amount of car space to make that happen, and then shot through the whole turn, and now has got to do that hard work all over again.
He does, yeah. I'm just looking at another little battle that's just playing at the back end of this as well, is that Dostal's finally got up to the back of Steele Allison. I was up to the back, he's all over that car at this point. I've seen mirrors go flying, and I wouldn't be surprised if more carbon was flying the way they've been battling. And they've still got another lap to go, Dostal here, and he's seeming a little bit impatient.
Oh, over and
the
under.
way they're racing, yeah, that worked actually.
Yeah, over and under at turn 9, and Allison was just all at sea there, had ran way too wide, so that puts Dostal through to 5th. And a bit wide, got to be careful.
Pretty deep there.
Yeah, he just struggled to keep it in bounds there, and just had his outside tyres on the white line. If he had gone another millimetre or two further right, those tyres would have been in the grass, and he would have been dragged in, just like a shark, dragging in its victim. He would have been into the grass pretty quickly. So he's through to 5th. Problem for him is Newing 6 seconds up the road. So
yeah,
now 7 seconds.
He's only got a lap left to play. This will be as far as he gets if he can hold on to it there. I think that's the thing, is that the last lap he's going to have to probably, I wouldn't say knock a 10th off, but he's at risk of overdriving it the way he's been driving the last lap or so, when it's very easy to do what Lockie Burke did in race 1 and just tip yourself out of a good position.
Yeah, that's right. So he's just got to make sure he brings it home here and picks up 5th place. So for Brenton Foley, he'll get another podium out of this. He doesn't have to contend with this car, but he will have to contend with it at the start of the next race. Race leader. Oh, another victory here for him. 8 seconds this time, and all thanks to getting through the traffic quickly and cleanly, and then setting sail and never headed after this one. So 2 from 2 for Kurt Stenberg, and he shows he can do it from position number 10 on the grid, and gets a victory there as well. So quite comfortable at the end of the day. Noah Tara finds his way through after being on pole. He's not been able to convert in race 1. Managed to get through in race 2 for P2, and we'll start on the outside for race number 3 coming up shortly. Brenton Foley going to start P3 for him in the next one. Good result for him. Luke Newing, great drive for him. 13 spots gained from the back of the grid. So he'll be mighty pleased with that one. Dostal and Steele Allison 5th and 6th for them. Brendan Ross just at the back of shot there at 7th. Brunswick, geez, he had a late fight on his hands with Loughnane throwing the kitchen sink at him, who finishes 9th. And Locke manages to hang on to 10th ahead of McManus. So the points at CRE Race Engineering continue to bleed. Luke Speck 12th, Cox 13th, and we're then waiting on Scott Murrell around the final corner, with Callaghan just behind him, and then you've got Burke and Steve Warwick in the shot here. They're going to come home. So everybody that starts this one gets home, so that's important, and we may inherit one more driver for this final race coming up in the next few minutes. So good job there by all the drivers, everybody home, but another victory for this man. So keeps chalking them up now. He's now 2 clear at the top of the all-time wins list, and might be looking for a hat trick of wins tonight coming up in a few minutes' time.
Absolutely, that was a pretty good race. And I think generally speaking, looking at least based off the finishing times, I think everybody in some way there had somebody to battle with the entire, oh not the entire, but in parts of that race.
So a couple of burnouts there in the runoff area, as everybody just gets themselves back to pit lane. So plenty of drivers just making their way there back in the next few minutes or so. There we go. So short hold here, and it'll be back into all things. Oh, geez, Brendan Ross tagged the wall there. It was like it's like Brodie Kostecki all over again. just in the back of the shot there. Although that time it was on the cool down in the in lap, so that'll be what things happen there.
I will say I've just been keeping the points up to date in the background. I find a completely useless stat as of the end of race 2. Not that there is a battle being tracked, but in the battle of the fill-ins. The battle of the guys that are filling in for tonight only. I'm not counting Palfrey in that. Of the guys that have turned up for tonight, currently Brunswick and Ross are tied for first in that 4-car battle. 9th and a 7th is equal to an 8th and an 8th. And then Lockie Burke and Scott Murrell are tied. 13th and 14th are equal to an 11th and a 16th. So that'll obviously be broken in race 3 because they can't earn the same points as the guy they're racing. But just an interesting way that's played out.
Yeah, that's a rather interesting way that it has played out. And we've seen some little quirks like this pop up from time to time as well. So it doesn't surprise me at all that something like that has popped up. It was like same thing happened at Sydney Motorsport Park. You had Stenberg and Devonish, finish first and second and first. Across the 2 races, and they exited the round with the same amount of points. It was just the way that happened to be. Will actually thought that there was more points on offer for the longer race, but no, when we did the short and long format last year, that's how it all worked out anyway, so there wasn't any change to that. But he's got to, they walked away from there, and then he managed to do a slightly better job than Stenberg at the Gold Coast and, move himself clear. But the point standings will take a little bit of a different turn come the end of this round. All right, so a little bit still to play out here. One more race to come, and the 2 combatants that finished first and second already on the front row of the grid for this one again.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how things play out now. To be fair, it'd be much the same as race 1. The difference will probably just be in that now Tara will get what's potentially the preferred line, given that's the racing line through. There'll be a bit more rubber down, and that's probably what's played a difference. Given that I think generally the car on the outside line has had the better start here when we've raced here in the past. I think that's played out tonight as well. So if the issue, and ultimately if it comes down for Noah, is that he just isn't able to start as well as Kurt, maybe this is the race where we see Noah lead even a lap, ideally at least the last one for him. But maybe what's going to make the difference for these guys is just the rubber versus not having the rubber for the start.
That's right. Well, it's I don't know what it is, but I think a number of drivers just need to start paying attention to, start observing other drivers and working out how on earth they do their starts. I think that's probably the one thing that, anybody can improve. It's your starts. Guilty, in my case, guilty as charged. There's times where I'll do a great practice start and then completely balls it up on the start of the race. It just happens to be that way. But that's one thing everybody probably should do, is look at what everybody else does better than you and learn from it. And in the case of Darryl Callaghan, the guys behind him don't follow what he just did. Put your 2 tyres on the outside of turn number 10 and 11. So keeping up to date on everything going on in the land of ASR while we have a brief moment of pause here. There is the season's moving along pretty quickly with all the racing that's been going on, and there's still a bit of racing to go this year. So I can't believe we are at the end, or nearly at the end of April already in this year. It's gone so quickly. So 2 more weeks from tonight, the development series round is next up for round 4. That's at Symmons Plains Raceway. And then a week after that, Supercars will be there as well. That's a slightly different format compared to what we've run at Symmons in years gone past, where it's always been about sprint racing or shorter distance races. There's actually going to be a longer format race for 2 longer format races for a change for Simmons. In some cases, like 42 laps, I think, for some of the drivers is going to sound like a bit of an eternity around Simmons Plains, but that's the way that it is. And that one actually has a unique element too. There's actually going to be some knockout qualifying. It's going to go on with that as well. It'll all be determined on the night as to how many cars turn up and how many you lose in Q1, Q2, and those that to get you down to a top 10 to go for pole position. So one of those unique things being introduced to ASR for the very first time this year. And then following that, it's a fair old wait, and we got end of May and start of June we're across to Barbagallo and then up to Hidden Valley at the end of June, and that's round 6. So the first 6 rounds of the year done before the 30th of June, before we start getting into the back half of the year. So pretty exciting times at ASR. The tracks that everybody knows and everybody likes and knows how to drive, and shouldn't take too much effort for those that haven't had a lot of seat time to get back up to speed. Something that they're actually looking forward to in the coming weeks. So not too much longer left now in this session. Just keeping an eye on the handful of drivers who are out there on the track. So there's only 5 of them out there so far, just opted to get a little bit of practice in. Ricardo's not sure if he's had another game crash or something there, but he's gone well off the turn there. Just looking at where he is, I think that's actually heading up the hill into turn number 4. So he's had a little bit of a moment there and struggling to do something. I think maybe the game itself might have actually crashed again.
Yeah, possibility. I've just seen in the one corner. He's just it seems as a funny thing is with the internet just a hissy, but it's been pretty accurate in the last little while. If it pops up in the middle of when I'm pretty sure someone's in a game and says somebody is now playing a game, that they've just had something crash and had to restart. So that's unfortunate. He should hopefully get back in time though.
Yeah, hopefully so. A couple of drivers just finishing up some flying laps, just waiting for them to jump across the line. I think Ricardo is actually the only one that's left out there at the moment, and he may or may not. It actually looks like he's in there as well. I think we'll just wait and see what happens when the thing advances to the next race. He might be lucky. He might be able to partake in the final one of the night. So some good things to work through there. One more race to go tonight. I think it's pretty hard to go against Kurt Stenberg for the next one, but hopefully Noah Tara's got something in his back pocket that he can use this time to hopefully throw down a little bit of a challenge for Stenberg. I mean, the last race was a bit different because they were coming through the grid from the rear, but not from the rear, from halfway up the field. But this time, it's one of those situations where he has he's got to get the better start. He has to take advantage of the better start from the correct side of the grid, the rubbered inside of the grid, because that's where Stenberg's got his good starts from, on that side of the road, so he's got to take advantage of it. And here we go. Grid for race number 3 tonight. He's ready.
Starting from pole will be Kurt Stenberg. It will be an easier run for him from over race number 2, but he is starting on the non-rubbered side, as I mentioned earlier. Starting alongside him will be Noah Tara. This is probably Noah's best chance to get in, to make the run for the ascendancy early, for him to see how things go off of that first lap. Third will be Brenton Foley, who's had a pretty good run tonight, as things are considered. He managed to sort of take advantage of the ill running, or the lack of running in good running in the second race for Brandon Dostal to pick up third there. So he's got a pretty good head of steam there. He'll be starting alongside Luke Ewing, who we'll see how Ewing goes. Now he's actually got a chance to fight directly with Brenton Foley, Mano El Mano. 5th place is Brandon Dostal. He'll be making his way up through the field a little bit as well. He's had some good pace. He just probably needs to calm down a little bit in the early stages, with Mitchell Steele Allison in 6th. He's had a good little quiet run, just the single car for his team here tonight. 7th is Brendan Ross, which, you know, based off his sort of run tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more of Rossi throughout the year. I think the bug might be back, might have been in him back again. With Hans Brunswick in 8th, it's good to see him back in the grid more as well as the year goes on. 9th is Darren Logden. He's had a good little quiet run up there into the higher standings of the points, with Lockie Lock in 10th. He'll be having a good little battle with his indirect teammate in Koenigsegg Manus back in 11th. He'll be trying to get his way through. 12th will be Luke Speck. Bit of a sad story for Speck in the first 2 races. He should be on his way back up in race number 3, with Daniel Cox in 13th. He'll probably make his way up a little bit as well. Murrell in 14th. He's been having a little quiet run, scoring some good points for CRE, with Darryl Callahan in 15th. Lockie Burke back there in 16th after that drive-through. And starting off the back is Steve Warwick. And only 17 cars this one, which means we have missed out on Dano.
Yep, unfortunately, looks like further gremlins, and he's decided to give this one a miss tonight as well. Just waiting for the drivers to sort themselves out again. There's a few things going on here, and off we go for the 7th race of the campaign. It's 3rd race tonight. Tara is making a fairly reasonable fist of this one, going into turn number 1, putting pressure on Stenberg. Top 3 as they were. They escaped pretty quickly, heading now down into the chicane for the first time. But behind them, it's getting really entertaining, because Brunswick has made a lightning start. Oh, Ewing's gone for a wild ride. What happened to him? He has gone well and truly out of business here, and he's in no man's land. I'm not sure what happened to him. He just went flying across the back of the shot at a vast rate of knots and didn't even know what happened there. And out of, was it 4th place? He got a little bit mugged at the start there. Still going. Going to go pick up some points. Let's go and pick this one up on the old Paint Doctor replay, because this one is definitely something worth having a look at. Let's see what the result is here. Is there a bit of contact here between himself and... oh, yeah, there was too, as Steele Allison turned for the corner. That just sent the 17 the wrong direction out there. So wouldn't be surprised to have probably need a bit more of a second look at that one, I think, at a later point time, to really get an idea of what's going on. But it's on for the lead already. Taro was getting rather interested, having a look down at turn at the last couple of corners. I think turn 12 was his opportunity there. Foley's right with them as well, so he's had a pretty good start.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, I was surprised that no one was able to make something of that, like I was kind of hoping that he would. But he is definitely still there, and he's got the opportunity that he had in race number 1 that he's going to be with Kurt the entire run through. Foley's tucked in a good little position there. He's just at the back of a pair of them. The way they're racing so far, at least, they haven't really had a chance to stretch legs on Foley, who's, I think he was trying to get, I think he that wasn't a move. I think he just his braking was trying to make sure he didn't run straight square into the back of Noah Tara. But he's actually running with them, surprisingly, which I didn't think was going to be happening. I thought this early they would start to stretch out, but
he's got the prime view of this one right now as we go through turn number 8, because Tara got some overlap. He's on the correct line here, the old switcheroo, and a good square drive out as they head down toward the hairpin. He's going to try and range up on the outside of the Camaro here. So Tara has decided to be aggressive at the beginning of this one, and Foley has got the box seat view of everything going on here, and he's got to be careful not to really stick his nose in here and cause a bit of a problem as they're starting to hold each other up. Stenberg's now protecting the inside line, heading down into the final sequence of corners, which means they'll have to run side by side. They'll have to give each other a bit of room. Tara skips across the inside there. He got it done. So Stenberg was sort of hung out a little bit to dry there. Just a little bit of an awkward bobble, I think, at the apex of turn 13 for Tara. Sort of scooted him a little bit wide and sort of into Stenberg's front corner. And he decided discretion was a better part of valor and just checked up a little bit and let the Mustang have the lead of this race without causing a major collision at the last sequence of corners.
Yeah, Stenberg, as I mentioned last year, he's got a history of chasing people down for a win. So he'll be pretty happy to sit here. And I think the important thing, as you mentioned earlier, for Foley, he's got to kind of recognise that he's just a passenger in this. Maybe now, now that it's calmed down a bit, you'll be able to race or potentially race Kurt without being at a risk of it's potentially just been swatted off because people don't realise he's there. But earlier, the leads only had eyes for each other. If Foley stuck his nose in, he had a really good chance of getting chopped off and getting spun as a result. So he's in a good spot where he can just sit here and he's just tagging along. His biggest rival, if we're going off of race 1 pace, is Dostal, and he's just cleared the battle with Steele Allison and Hans Brunswick and Lockie Lock back there.
Yeah,
and he's probably now on his way up to the back of the 074.
Yeah, so we're going to keep an eye on that one as well. When you said that they had the race leaders had eyes for each other, I knew what you meant when it talks about they knew where each other was, but there was another connotation involved in that one as well. That you've got to be careful with some of those words.
The second I said it, I went, okay, I've got to make sure I'm reading this and saying this to the right audience. But yeah, that's all right. I know what I meant. That's what matters.
I know what you meant too, but it's everyone's got to get a rise out of somebody lately some of these nights. Brandon Dostal's here. We're going to keep an eye on him. Both him and Brenton Foley got track cuts on that last lap as well. So we didn't really get a read on what they did, but the deficit between them at the moment is about 2.7 seconds. So let's see if the 76 can mow down the 074 in the next few laps. But he's been released from this little battle here. Brunswick got his ears boxed in a little bit. Steele Allison's picked up a spot. And then Locke's had a really reasonable start, actually more than reasonable. He's had an excellent start. He's up 3 spots from where he started. Granted, one of them's from Luke Ewing going straight on with the contact with Steele Allison at turn 4. But he's actually survived all of that, opening lap carnage and has done really, really well.
Yeah, it's a really good start for Locke to push his way up through. And it's sort of taking advantage of what's happening around him. He's got a pretty angry little battle back going on behind him, which is probably the guys he's found a benefit of, the likes of the Ross, the Luke Speck, and Lockie Burke. I see Darren Logan and Cozy Martis right at the back of that as well. But yeah, really good little run for Locke, and he kind of needs it in a way if he wants to amped up to have a bit of a chance in the team standings. Obviously, Tara's pulling his part tonight, but it's really going to hinge on what's the performances Locke can pull out of this year. Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, at the moment they're both doing fairly well. They're both ahead of the two sister team cars, the other 2 Mustangs, which are the Igmanis and Devonish machine. Obviously, Devonish's car in the hands of Scott Murrell tonight, but they're outscoring them in terms of points in the same way that CRE Anson are having a reasonable night on the points front. Not the same as the amped up guys, but amped up starting to definitely put some points on the board. This is a good round for them with a number of drivers absent. Don't want to throw away the points just there because he's had a moment coming over the hill there. That's put Brendan Ross right on his tail. Daz has opened the door up for Rossi, who's got his own little battle back there with Berkey, and I'm not sure where everyone's hiding in VCs. I know that Berkey and Ross are former teammates, so they're probably not going to play too harshly with each other, but probably looking at that, and I think, not that he's holding in history, but I know that there's been some fun incidents in the past between Locke and Ross, but they're running up on him now, and now that they've started to play things a little smartly between the pair of them, they've got the run on him now. Actually, they might both put a move on him here, they're about to get it done. So Ross is through. Burke actually slightly pour a run off the corner, so he's going to have to try and hold on and maybe make a move into the final complex. Yeah, so Burke will be looking for the side draft here if he can make that happen, but he decides no, just not have the drive traction out of the hairpin and has to fall in behind. And Locke with a bit of return serve on the rear of the 46. So that's and that actually might be to his detriment because that actually pushed him back a little bit towards Burke. And Burke with a fairly awkward direction change there in the braking zone for one. Luckily Speck wasn't right behind him, but he's now like the lead of the 2 SES and Shogun cars and hasn't really made a huge impression yet. He's picked up 2 spots, one over his teammate from that incident and then the other one just on track, and he's actually moved ahead of Igmanis here too, so slowly starting to work his way back. He would probably be eyeing off the 3 cars in front, thinking if I can get past these guys, that would be a pretty reasonable finish to my night. Absolutely, yeah. So that's sort of where he's sitting, and yeah, it's been good run for Sex trying to get up there. Generally, we've sort of Newing's been the ones that are looking out for pace, but Newing's had a bit of a, I wouldn't say a flaky, very temperamental night for the pace. He's got the pace, but obviously he didn't finish race 2, and so he's still mired down there in 16th, trying to work his way back up through the field. Whereas, yeah, Spec's really the representative driver for them tonight, based off of actual race results rather than outright pace. And he's doing a good job just tucked in here behind Locke. He's probably got a little bit of advantage over Locke that he can maybe try and make advantage of the next couple of laps. I know one driver that probably feels he's going to be quicker than Locke based off the race too. Igmanis is probably, you can just about see the green and blue of the 237. He's going to probably try and get in there as well.
Yeah, well, the problem for Locke is he's made a couple of mistakes in the last lap and a bit, so he's starting to ask a little bit too much of those Dunlop tyres, and there's a little flat spot that keeps getting picked up in some of these heavy braking zones, so he's going to have to be really careful here. Actually, Burke will lock up just ahead of him. All pushing the limits, one to try and pass, the other one to try and stay ahead of a couple of cars. So you just need to be a little bit careful in this sort of mid-phase of the race. We're 6 laps in, working lap 7 at the moment. The field still quite energised, this middle pack. So for sort of from Brunswick sort of all the way, actually probably even more so from Steele Allison, all the way down. Oh, as Igmanis exits stage right and into the fence in the back of shot there. Yep, stricken machine there, 51. The 51's out. So for Igmanis, that's big points gone begging in not only teams but in the drivers' points as well. Here it is, and this one is behind Spec, so that relieves the pressure valve on the Camaro. What did he do here? Oh, he ran through the grass, and oh wow, yep, and that's pretty heavy contact here with the wall, and that's an engine killer. So that explains a lot for Igmanis. Unfortunately, the out of this one, and Lockie Burke as well, out as well. So he was just a little bit further up the order, and he was putting the pressure on. It was in behind Lockie Locke as well, and I think sort of trying to make a move toward Brendan Ross. So he's out as well. That's a bit of a surprise.
I have a feeling Burke might have done his engine.
Right.
Because I just managed to look, and there was a very clean 5th to 3rd shift in the braking zone. Which, if that's tracking is accurate, yeah, that's gonna be an over rev as he's gotten into 3rd. So maybe on the paddle and has double pulled a paddle, or maybe the paddle's playing, or even with a sequential, maybe just not reading quite right and just read a double click. But either way, yeah, that's gonna do it. He's having a really good run up until that point.
Yeah, he certainly was. So for Spec, that gives him a couple of extra spots and moves Steve Warwick into the top 10. I was in the process, before all of that kicked off, I was in the process of saying that there was this big old train from sort of Steele Allison all the way down, but with Burke coming out of that group, it sort of split this pack in half. So you've got this group of 3 here, running 5th, 6th and 7th, and then Locke, Spec and the next 2, and Steve Warwick and Darren Locke, the 10th and 11th, pretty much line astern as well. So there's Spec, and they'll probably try and make his way past Lachlan Locke in the next few minutes or so. And oh, he's tried for it. He's tried for it. And there was all sorts of sideways locking going on into turn number 1. So the move was on, and you can see he was right up the tail of the 237 going into turn number 1. And he was all sorts of sideways. Let's have a look at this one on the Paint Doctor replay. I don't think I've seen this quite before. But Locke was very much awake to what was happening here. Went for the plunge. Oh, yeah, just wasn't even. The move was there, but when he committed to the pass, he was still a little bit behind and just too quick on the downshift and a little bit of compression lock. That was pretty straightforward at the end of the day.
I think it probably threw Spec off as well. When I don't think it was anything defensive from Locke necessarily. I think what threw Spec off was that Locke very much V'd the corner. He turned in basically as soon as he hit the brake, which is fair racing. I think it's just normally very expected him to go a little deeper before he turned in and try and sort of make more of a corner out of it, whereas he's sort of V'ing the corner and starting it real early. That's probably what threw him off. He was pretty well lined up to make a run there, and it's just that as lopsided drift across as part of his racing line. He's just not expected it and panicked and pinched the brake, and that's ultimately what's caused the slide.
Yeah, well, round 2 is about to happen here, and yeah, you're right. There's a couple of parts of the course where you can make a few changes here. I mean, I remember in the development series, like, yeah, from here, on your braking zone, yeah, you try and either turn in late and get to apex, or some people like to sort of angle toward the corner when they're braking. So it's about understanding what your opponent's doing so you can actually commit to a move earlier, or if there's a more appropriate part of the track to, you know, to make a pass. You just got to learn where you're stronger and where there's no hope in hell of getting through on your opponent after all that. So a bit further behind these two, Lognan has actually just managed to get through on Warwick. There's a yellow, very brief yellow flag up at
I
somewhere
think Ross
here.
is at a small moment because he's backed up and he's now just dropped behind Locke and just in front of Spec.
Yeah, he has. So Ross has had a moment in Sector 2 on this lap. And I think Lognan got that move done on Steve Warwick before the yellow flag came out. So that would be, he'd keep that if that's the case. And so he's the one currently in 10th place at the moment. There's a bit of an exchange going on. We're keeping eye on things with the two leaders. They're getting quite frisky with it at the moment. I just saw Stenberg very briefly pop up at the top of the timing tree, and that's because he'd made a move on Tara at the final corner. So these two are not wasting any time. Second, third of the race is gone, and they finished doing their bit. They're now sort of they're approaching the end of the second, third of the race, and then they're going to start to fight this one out. So turn 1 is a passing opportunity, and the last corner is a passing opportunity, and that's where they started to do that little merry dance, and now have to press on. And they've gapped Brett and Foley. The margin's actually been holding steady at around 2.5 seconds, so it's not ballooned out like it did in race number 1.
Yeah, so I think partially because of the battling, and I suppose it's what I talked about in race 1 of being in a position to control the race. Tara's in a position where much as Stenberg was in race 1, he can run whatever pace he wants as long as he keeps Stenberg up and thereabouts. But the other thing as well, I think, is there's more side-by-side racing than we've seen in the last 2 races, which is what's slowing them down, which is what's keeping Foley in it. He's just far enough back that he won't be getting any direct benefits from being where he is in terms of slipstream. He's just outside of the envelope. But even then, just having them there is a bit of a character chase, probably helping him and doing him a little bit of a favour in trying to build and keep a margin over Dostal, who has gotten through, as I mentioned. He got through ages ago, but he's still sitting there at about a 3-second gap back from Foley.
Yep. So Stenberg having another look down there, turn number 1 on the exit, coming off of the last corner, and still nothing going on there. Locke still in 7th place, and with Ross pretty much, as you said, making that mistake, dropping back in behind the 237, but ahead of Luke Speck. And Speck's actually got his hands full now. Like, you look in the back of the shot there, he has got his hands full, well and truly. So I'm trying to keep an eye on what actually is going on there with Speck, because it's almost like he's fighting some sort of issue, and he's been turned, and there's an incident down here at the first turn, and I didn't see the start of that. We saw the tail end of it, and there was a couple of cars tangled up in that one there. We'll go back and have a bit more of a look at it. And Speck had been losing a little bit of time. I'm not sure if he was fighting some sort of issue here. And he's gone down into turn number 1, and there's a bit of tagging from some of the other cars behind as well. And I'm not sure how to read that one. It looks like there was 3 parties involved, not just Speck and Logman, maybe Steve Warwick, maybe slightly in there as well. Something for after the race, Brady.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that was just a bit of willing racing, and I think maybe Speck being... I'm not sure what he's dealing with, or it's tyre or what it is, but he's
Ross
just
has
not
gone
quite
deep.
Had the... Yep, he has.
He's gone deep, and Speck, because of swings and roundabouts. So I was saying here, Speck was actually, looking like he was sort of hopefully going to try and get past Brendan Ross, but he's fallen back through the field, and then Ross's mistake has only cost him time to lock. He hasn't lost a position to Logden in the process. So, one giveth and one taketh away. That's the way that racing goes sometimes, unfortunately. And yeah, this has not been a good race for the SES Shogun Camaros. They have. I get the impression that Speck is fighting some sort of his sim racing issue or something, because he's not running around it at full pace, and I'm keeping an eye on some things like, you know, where the shift cut is, and it doesn't look like he's, I'm not sure if he's not using full rev range, but at every point in time, but something is just not quite right with his car. His pace has just fallen off drastically.
Yeah, I get the impression he's it's a cut the last lap, so I can't actually see what his pace is like. I get the impression, yeah, like he's driving around like 8/10 or something. It's it's either he's noticing an issue with the car, or there's something external to the sim racing itself that he's dealing with currently.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's odd, because it's
Odd.
Specs he's a wiser head on the shoulders for the age that he is within racing.
And to make matters worse, his teammate's just coming in to retire, I think, as well. There's something not quite right with that car, yeah, and that is that's a retirement for Luke Newing. So yeah, not been the best night for those guys. They were fancying through some good points tonight, and that's just not materialised for them. That's disappointing to see. It's hard to see, actually.
It is, yeah. What I was going to say there is he is a much more mature head in terms of his race experience, Spec, but at the same time he's not the sort of driver that'll tootle around at 8/10 and just, you know, and just complete the race. Like he's a competitive person. He'll want to be in there, want to be in the fight. He'll be pushing as hard as he can. So yeah, there is a reason why he's currently running around off the back of this train in 12th, and a second, nearly 2 seconds clear of the train in itself. Yeah. He'll be getting some good points at this point. He's got 20-something seconds to the next car in Scott Murrell, so he'll be getting points for 12th as things go, but this isn't a usual Spec. There's something else in play here. Yeah,
something else there to be unwrapped by the end of the night. Foley just started to chip down the margin to the leading two over the last couple of laps. It's just gone a little bit the other way on this lap. It was 2.4 seconds at one stage. He had it down to 2, and it's now back up to 2.2, now to 2.3. So a bit of an ordinary lap for Brenton Foley, some 0.3 of a second slower than Noah Turra, and a track limits infringement for Kurt Stenberg on the previous tour as well. So they're still glued together by about, 2.5 tenths, just ahead of him. And just keeping on Brandon Dostal, his times are not making an impression on Brenton Foley at the moment in 4th place. There he was, just in the back of the shot there. Here he comes. And 3.5 seconds the margin. And it's pretty competitive actually that last time around. He pretty much matched Foley's Sector 1. 29.164 to a 29.167. So that's pretty close. That's, a couple of thousandths of a second in that one. But Dostal, 3.5 seconds to make up and 4.5 laps to do it in. And in Sector 2, he's lost a 10th this time. So I think it's fair to say Foley's... Oh, as I say that, Brenton Foley. I was about to say, yeah, as I said that, Brenton Foley with a mistake at turn number 10, and Dostal's all over him here. So this is Christmas in April for Brandon Dostal. And tell you what, that was pretty close. There might have been a little bit of contact between a Camaro and a Mustang there at turn number 12. So a mistake from Foley at the end of Sector 2. And big mistake running wide through the grass. That margin that he had, that 3.5 seconds, is now gone.
Yeah, so he was running pretty smoothly sailing there. He was within range of the lead pack, but he needed something to happen to actually have a chance to upset either of them. But yeah, all that margin that he very carefully built over the course of the last 15 laps over Dostal is now all gone. And Dostal, the counterpoint, he didn't think he was going to get to Foley at all, probably, and then it's happened. Although there's a yellow as a Kurt Stenberg who's just
It is Stenberg. So Stenberg's just come back into this little group here, and that's a surprise. So that lets Turra off the hook, and let's see if we can get the Paint Doctor replay to tell us what happened here. Going up into turn number 6, so Turra protected the inside there. I think this is Stenberg. That's on his own. So that's a little bit too early on the loud pedal. Full pirouette 360, and got going again. So that's self-inflicted, and pretty much gifts the win to Noah Tara. But that puts Dostal and Foley right on Stenberg's tail, so he can't afford another one of those slip-ups. And Tara has a 6.5 second lead, so 3 laps to go. Tara can smell the checkered flag from here, I think. Just needs to keep it nice and tidy, no risk, and he'll pick up a victory here at Taupo.
Yeah, it's just a play smart from here on out. It's that's all that's caused a lot of this kerfuffle in the back lap or last lap or so was one man or self-inflicted mistakes. Yeah, he's got a 6 second, 6.5 second gap, and it depends on where Stenberg's tyres are at. Tyres themselves aren't necessarily a concern. You will make it down without popping them, but they will feel second hand at the back end. And one thing that we, I think, noted in Dev Series was it was similar to a couple other experiences I've had in the past where the tyres are fine, but if you overheat them once, you find it very hard to bring them back down below temperature again.
Yeah, that's right. Bretton Foley, big lock-up going into the hairpin again. Very, not that bad as what he did a couple of laps ago, going off the end of the road and around the grass, but Dostal not there to capitalise on that error. And Foley's going to have to fight hard for a podium result here. Stenberg, I think, is just starting to open up that margin just a little bit.
Dostal's into the
lane.
Dostal,
yeah. I was about to say, yeah. Why has Brandon Dostal gone into pit lane? Is that deliberate, or is that something else that we've, or has he had some sort of a game issue? I think he's had. I don't know. He's retired, so he's had some sort of an issue. Did he pop the engine?
It might be an engine pop. But all I can tell for sure is he's rolled through behind Foley with a 0 RPM. So he's probably in that downshift. He's probably done the similar thing to Berkey, double downshifted somewhere, popped the engine, and that'll be why he's rolled through the lane and retired.
Yeah, or it's some sort of a sim failure or some sort of a hardware failure that's caused that problem there. So that then effectively settles this race, barring any disasters, because the field is quite well strung out at the moment. Top 3 strung out, and then 4th Steele Allison, 5th Dismount Screen Brunswick, and then you've got Locke running in 6th, and then Lognan and Cox up to 8th, Specht up to 9th, so he might be able to maybe try and hunt down Daniel Cox in the last lap and a half, and then Brendan Ross in 10th, and the others still going, Warwick, Murrell and Callaghan, and then the 4 retirees after all of this. So the puts a bit of a dampener on the end of this one. The battle with Foley and Dostal was definitely starting to get interesting, but it has come to nothing, and we're now on the final tour, and Noah Tara 6.9 second advantage, and is heading for the checkered flag. This just goes to show, Rhodey, with and all 3 of the races have illustrated this tonight. Tara and Stenberg, in terms of their pace matching, have pretty much been in lockstep with each other. It just depended on how things played out. So race 1, they were very close for the whole entire duration. Race 2, with the top half of the field inversion, Stenberg was just able to get through the traffic a bit quicker, and by the time Noah managed to pick his way through, Stenberg was already 7 or 8 seconds up the road, but the gap remained as it was. It didn't get that much bigger, and it didn't get that much smaller. And the same thing has happened here. Starting after Kurt's mistake, the gap has pretty much either stayed where it is, or maybe just grown by a 10th or 2, or shrunk by a 10th or 2. So they've been pretty well matched on pace all night, and Noah probably deserves the results. He's gotten 2 seconds, and now to be a first place, and Stenberg with 2 firsts and a second. So the round overall will go to Stenberg, but Tara will get the final victory of the night. Well done.
Yep, and that is Tara's first win of the season as well.
Certainly is. Stenberg will be your new championship leader, with Will Devenish absent, finishing P2. Foley for P3, so that's a good series of results for him tonight. I think that probably gives him 3rd for the round overall. Steele Allison 4th, good result for him there. Brunswick, 5th for him. And Lockie Lock, that'll the retirement of Dostal elevates him up to 6th. Darren Lognan to 7th, and his times were pretty good toward the back end of that race. Cox to 8th. Luke Speck is 9th, but he's a bit wide at the final corner there. I was just trying to see what was going on there. He must have tried to have a lunge at Cox and couldn't quite get it done, so he finishes 9th. And Brendan Ross will be the last man inside the 10 home, with Warwick, Murrell and Callaghan, the cars to cross the line in the last stanza of the race. There's Murrell. And Callaghan's about, I would say about 13 seconds in arrears of the number 15. So Murrell home for 12th, and yeah, Callaghan home for 15th. So end of proceedings for the night for the ASR Supercars field. End of proceedings for round number 3. It's officially in the books. And there's your race 3 Victor on his way back to pit lane. So job for Noatara. He's been threatening already this year to be up the pointy end of the field. Gold Coast was the blip on the radar, and probably will be the drop round for him. But is this the charge that starts his campaign, starts to bring him back into play for a potential shot at a title later this year? A couple of drivers still to come back in. Stenberg and, well, Foley doing Foley things down the back straight, and I think he's pretty happy with his night's work based on his achievement there down the back straight. So take it, he'll be taking those points to the bank for sure.
Absolutely, it's interesting. It is interesting what it's done, and we'll talk about it a little bit more detail after the interviews. But we expected some drops, maybe not as big as we thought. Will Devonish only drops to 2nd.
Yeah.
By virtue of the points all he picked up in the first 2 rounds. The next one who was, in theory, of a chance to overtake him was Igmanis, but obviously not the round for him. Igmanis drops a few spots, and it's actually Luke Speck who's currently sitting 3rd in the championship now after tonight.
Yes, so yeah, David McDonald, who was 3rd after round 2, of course, missing tonight, and yeah, drops a chunk of points there as well. So a few drivers that drop a chunk of points, but early days in the championship yet, still some things to be figured out. And I think Rody, was going to organise to have a chat with our top 3 for the round. Was Kurt Stenberg, Noah Turra, and Brenton Foley. And we'll see if they are able to accept and come up and have a chat. Been a good night, been a pretty clean night overall in terms of the actual racing and the contact. There's definitely a few people that were, victims of their self-inflicted wounds, I think is what we could probably call it. Turn 5 seemed to have claimed a couple of victims on, at least 3 occasions as far as I could count tonight. So those drivers will need to, I think Newing was caught out, Speck was caught out, and I think there was at least one other. And they've all managed to, to recover and get a half-decent result out of that following a few of them. The drivers are starting to make their way to have a chat with us for all things regarding the round tonight. Rody, just going to figure out, I guess, where you'd probably like to start with this one. I think we might start with our round winner, 2 of the round wins for tonight, and the new championship leader is Kurt Stenberg.
Absolutely. Well, it took you, you could argue 1 round, you could argue 2 rounds longer than you wanted to, Kurt, but after race 1, you finally got that race when you needed. You are now ASR's most winningest Supercars driver, but also very good haul of points tonight. Not quite perfect, but not far off.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Good to finally get that win off. It seemed like that was becoming a bit of a bogey, but yeah, I pretty good night. The last race though, you got to be a tiny bit disappointed to finish that way. I feel like our car was really strong, and I feel like we had pace, and we made a bit of a mistake at the start. We made a bit of a mistake at the end, but 2 wins, it's pretty good.
Absolutely. I think we're talking about it coming into it, and you're saying you weren't you weren't a particular fan of the track coming into tonight. Has your opinion changed a bit after the racing has played out?
Not really. I actually just said I'd like it less. Last year I didn't mind it, but the reverse grid race you just couldn't pass. Like passing was difficult, and like look, I was a good battle with Noah. Like I did enjoy that, but the thing is you just can't. You get up the inside and the corner track goes the other way. You just can't. You can race for 2 or 3 corners, but you can't really race more than that. So it's just very difficult to race on. So, but hey, look, we had less trouble getting through the field in the reverse grid race this year. So we must have done something right with overtaking.
Absolutely. Well, it was a great run by yourself tonight. Going on to the next round, which is a few weeks away, we're getting rid of these nice big long tracks, and we're going on a little short track adventure. The first one being Simmons Plains. What's your thoughts going into that?
Well, I love Simmons Plains. It's normally one of my best tracks, I would say. I've had some pretty dominant victories there. Normally got a good setup there. I can't remember how I went last year in these cars, but it'll be good to not spend half the race in a corner. It'll spend most of it. Well, actually, that's technical, I guess, because Simmons Plains, half the track is a corner, but they don't count. They're just
Yeah.
ones that you're flat out through. So, but yeah, all I've done is turn. I feel like all night. So, it'd be good to open it up a bit.
Absolutely. Well, great work by yourself tonight, Kurt, to pick up not only the win you were needing to get ahead of Luke Rosella, but also now the championship lead as well. And we'll catch you in a few weeks at Simmons Plains.
No worries, thanks, mate. And hey, look, that's a bit artificial, but we'll see how we go when Will gets back, after the drop rounds.
Absolutely. Moving on to second for the night, and a man who's picked up his first second of the season, and crucially also his first win of the season, and Noah Tara. How was your night, Noah?
Yeah, pretty good. I was pretty happy with the pace. Didn't quite have the race car that I wanted. I was lacking a few tenths on Kurt. But yeah, overall I was pretty happy with how the car felt. Just couldn't quite match the low speed stuff.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of half answered the next question I was going into, but what was it you were feeling you were lacking compared to Kurt, and was it for something maybe that for maybe a lack of effort on your end in race one, or was it that you literally gave all you could and just couldn't get past him?
Yeah, I was probably a bit too cautious race one. I was kind of like basically waiting for a mistake or waiting to be within a couple of tenths on the back straight. But then, like, before I know it, it was lap 18 and I wasn't close enough. So I reckon if I was a bit more aggressive, it would have been a bit more exciting. But yeah, like I said, I didn't really quite have the couple of tenths I needed to really get past around on this track. And yeah, I was just kind of struggling at the low speed and made probably a few too many mistakes.
Absolutely. Well, it's still a great bit of work tonight. You've obviously picked up your first win of the season, and a good opportunity to take advantage of the lack of a will tonight. You got a bit more work to do, given the drop round effectively already taken at Surfers Paradise. But moving on to the next round at Simmons Plains, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't mind the track. I've always gone pretty decently around there. I don't think I'll have the same kind of pace or be as competitive as I was here, but I reckon I could be, pushing for a podium at least.
Fair enough. Well, great work by yourself tonight, Noah, to pick up your first win of the year and to have the car on the podium the entire way through. And we'll catch you in a few weeks' time at Simmons Plains.
Yep, thank you, Reddy.
And on to the third place for the night, and another driver with his first of the season, his first podium, his first 2 podiums of the year. Brenton Foley, you were made to work for it in parts there, but pretty good running all the same.
Yeah, I made it difficult on myself a couple of times, but I'm happy to get some podiums under my belt. Definitely didn't have the pace of the 2 ahead. It was evident in that last race that, like, I was maintaining the gap to them, and they were side by side, and I had the track to myself. So that just shows how fast that they were. But it took 3 races, finally got my pressures right. But no, overall, really happy with how the round went tonight.
Absolutely, and a good haul of points as well, having one of your former teammates back in the car alongside you. What was that like?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I said to them, I've got to give them a quick shout out because both of them hadn't turned laps in months, and 3 top 10s at a last-minute call-up is very impressive.
Absolutely. Well, we're moving on to Simmons Plains next time we're out on track. It would be the first time we're trying a bit of a drop qualifying format, but the racing is what matters. What's your thoughts going into that?
I love Simmons Plains. I don't know why some people dislike it. I think it's a fun little track with lots of passing opportunities and just it's very unique. Pace-wise, I think Gen 2 I was good, Gen 3 not so much. So got a little bit of work to do, but just got to keep chipping away at it. It should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, great work by yourself tonight, and good to get yourself a couple of podiums, and we'll catch you again in a few weeks' time.
Thanks very much, guys.
And that has been our round podium.
Well done, Roddy. Thank you very much, as always. And good to see a couple of drivers that haven't managed to put a couple of complete rounds together so far this year, managing to make it onto the podium for the round overall this evening. So good to see Tara and Foley up there with Kurt Stenberg. As we mentioned a little while ago, we now take a couple of weeks sabbatical, and then we are back in about 3 weeks for Simmons Plains. So a bit of a different format and a bit of a different qualifying arrangement as well. So we look forward to your company then. Thank you very much for watching. Please stay safe and drive safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.